Analog horror has exploded in popularity in recent years, bringing great series like Gemini Home Entertainment and The Monument Mythos into popularity. These series are amazing, but there is one analog horror series that, in my opinion, I feel does an amazing job at sharing the story that it's trying to share, and that is Greylock. Greylock is an analog horror series created by Rob Gavagan, who also found success early on in YouTube's mainstream days as a horror YouTuber with popular series such as Seriously Strange, The Serial Killer Files, and Twisted Tens, which he's still doing, by the way, so you should go subscribe to him like right now. Can you tell I'm an old fan of his though? Clearly, his work and experience covering such dark and disturbing topics have contributed to the cohesive and terrifying story that Greylock presents for us, one that is still just beginning. At the time of this video, there have been 12 tapes uploaded to the channel, with the most recent one, tape 12, Waking Your Subconscious, being posted on January 30th, 2024. But before we talk about the connections and answers we get from the latest tape, we need to establish the horrific events that led up to our recent tape and what the content implies for the future of the story. The video opens up with a CCTV clip of what looks to be an abandoned office and someone attempting to access an archival system for a company called SimioDyn USA. The system then asks our mystery hacker what they would like to do, and we can hear what sounds like incoherent dialogue, or like whispering or something.
What would you like to do?
After which, the system accesses the archival storage before a quick flash of a fatal error screen shows for a few seconds, informing us to contact the on-site technician immediately. After the screen flickers away, our mystery hacker begins to initiate a data extraction of the archival data, and we're shown more CCTV shots of the building, which has seemingly switched from an office-like environment to a more laboratory-esque room. This may or may not mean anything later, but as far as we know, it is the first possible glance into SimioDyn USA that we get, and it more than likely will not be the last. While these shots flash by, we hear the progress of the data extraction finish, and then we hear that there was no drive or disk for the data to be extracted to, bringing a close to the first tape of the series. Like I mentioned, this doesn't really seem to mean much now, and there's not really too much information to dissect from here, other than the fact that this does seem to be some mystery person accessing the archival footage that is stored within one of SimioDyn's computers. And if you thought that was interesting, wait until you see the next tape, because that's when shit starts to get real. We see dashcam footage of a dark winter night with a radio sermon playing in the background. It's interesting to note that the pastor delivering the sermon seems to be discussing the inherent danger of pursuing evil, as evil will only end up finding you, and insists and almost pleads with the listener to avoid the temptation of pursuing darkness.
Believers, when men pursue evil, it is evil that they will find. Mark my words, there is no good that can come from the pursuit of darkness.
If it wasn't already obvious enough, this series features quite a few religious elements that actually do a great job of foreshadowing the evil of what's to come. Like, the series itself is telling the audience what is coming, but the characters are oblivious to the signs. The video continues with our drivers still making their way up the mountain as the pastor delivers a sermon, reiterating the importance of not being led into the temptation of following evil, as the devil will tempt you with it if you tempt him with your curiosity.
Let me read to you, dear believer, the words of the late brilliant Charles Spurgeon, who discussed this at length in a sermon all the way back in 1864. He said, quote, "Our adversary, the devil, goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. We are taught by our Lord Jesus to pray, do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. What we are taught to seek or shun in prayer, we should equally pursue or avoid in action. Very warily, therefore, should we endeavor to avoid temptation, seeking to walk in the path of obedience, so that we may never be guilty of tempting the devil to tempt us."
It also advises to avoid entering the thicket in search of the lion.
We are not to enter the thicket in search of
The car then stops, and our driver gets out, beginning to walk around the woods, searching for something before they come upon a patch of blood and start zooming in. The video then cuts to our hiker walking around and looking through the trees. We come back to the bloodied snow as a heavily distorted news broadcast begins to play. We get more shots of freshly bloodied snow and wandering through the woods before we return back to the trail of blood. It's here that the broadcast then mentions this. While we hear this, we get footage of our hiker following the trail to a tree where we see something sticking out of it. I honestly can't make heads or tails of what this could be. It almost looks like a plank of wood lodged into a tree, but then it looks like it moves slightly and then the footage cuts. So, I don't know, bro. But keep this sighting in mind for later, because I think I might actually have an idea as to what that could have been. We return to the car where our driver seems to have made it back intact and is driving slowly with the lights off, like they're trying to be as unnoticeable as possible while leaving. Our driver turns the headlights on, inching forward a bit closer, then suddenly stopping and turning the high beams on, seemingly trying to look down the road at an unseen threat. They do this a couple times before they leave the lights off, probably wondering whether whatever was following them had lost interest. This entire section also sees a return of the pastor delivering his sermon. However, the tone of the message is much different now.
When we will come face to face with the devil himself, whether we intended to or not, dear believer, we are drawn to him by our own hearts.
He then quotes Matthew 15:19, saying, "Out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, and slander." And then goes on to say that within our hearts and within our minds, in a place where most people don't even know exists within themselves, is a mist shadow. He goes on to say this.
There is a shadow nested deep, deep within our hearts, within our minds, in a place most people don't even know exists within themselves. The devil is gonna call to those depths, dear believer.
The difference between the messages before and after the hike are very striking, and it's notable that it comes after the pastor warned the listener to not delve into the thicket in search of the lion. But unfortunately, our driver does not perceive this as a warning and tempts the evil to follow him, leading to this interaction.
And though you may tremble before the beast, you should make it easier on yourself and accept what it is that he bestows upon you.
We jump to our driver speeding down the mountain roads as the sermon on the radio begins to distort further, warning the driver that the devil is still with them. The video then ends with a chilling message from the pastor. This entire tape is our first look and hint at the horrors that happened on Mount Greylock. We know this is Mount Greylock because a news broadcast mentioned the hikers who walked the trails of Mount Greylock for years and had never seen such carnage before, much less a human skull. Mount Greylock itself seems to have an ominous and evil presence, as the sermon we heard on the radio was seemingly warning the driver about driving into the thicket in search of the lion, for evil will then follow you, which seems to be exactly what happened. And I'm just gonna say it right now, these characters gotta do a better job of listening, and you're gonna feel this way by the end of the video, trust me. The messages went from a warning about searching for evil to then encouraging the driver to make it easier on the devil and give yourself to him. That the devil has taken a part of you and will give it back bit by bit. It also mentioned a dark shadow that is inside of everyone, which, yeah, buddy, we've all seen Dexter, okay? We know it's the dark passenger. But it's no surprise that this series has garnered the attention and hype that it has. We're only 2 episodes in, and we already have a very compelling oppressive force that seemingly manipulates those around them through one way or another, and mentions of a shadow self deep within us. The story is not only interesting, but the sound design and the acting is incredible. I mentioned that the series was created by Rob Gavagan, but I wanted to note that he was also the pastor on the radio delivering the sermon, which, bravo Rob, that was a really good performance. But let's move on to our third tape, as we still have crucial story elements to introduce. Tape 3 opens with a warning screen that includes the seal of Department of Defense and, the Department of War at this point. Sorry, Rob, you have to update your series because apparently that's not even accurate anymore. And the Department of the Army, implying that whoever this tape is meant for could be in the military themselves or are just an active participant of whatever the orientation is for. We then see that the videotape is only intended for the use of someone named Alexander Michael Marsh, and we're shown his subject ID, further confirming that Alex was a participant. Keep this name in mind for later. After a standard warning screen of unauthorized viewing, we move on to the orientation tape. Before we go on, I want to mention that there is fine text under the warning that says this tape will only work in specialized military sanctioned hardware, meaning your standard VCRs will not play the tape. You need a military grade VHS player, which, don't get too excited because all that means is that shit is gonna fall apart or explode after one use. There is also a date to note here, which is January 2nd, 1993. Additionally, we should keep in mind that SimioDyn USA were the ones who manufactured the tape to begin with, not the DoD or the DOW like you'd come to expect. The tape begins and we can see that this is labeled Preconditional Protocols and Orientation Video System, TF1, implying that there are more tapes of this nature we may be able to see in the future, which we do. This tape is meant to be given to service members or participants that are a part of Unit 13's experiments. Alex Marsh is one of these service members or participants. We then learn that this tape is an orientation program for an experiment that is part of Project Stargate, and a partnership between the US Army and SimioDyn USA. It's also worth noting that Project Stargate was indeed a real-life op carried out by the CIA in order to research the existence and subsequent practical use of remote viewing and other areas of parapsychology. And, spoiler alert, in real life that obviously didn't really lead anywhere. But in Greylock, it's clear that the higher powers here were indeed successful in their own goals. And I really wish that they weren't. The video continues on explaining that the person viewing this tape has been selected to be a test candidate for Unit 13, and goes on to address something odd.
We are sure you've heard plenty of rumors surrounding what it is that we do, but we are willing to bet that most everything you've heard is wrong. Being a highly confidential part of Project Stargate, which you've already been briefed on, Unit 13 studies a revolutionary and promising area of parapsychology. thought forms.
Tulpas are a concept derived from Tibetan Buddhists, where it is believed humans can manifest a materialized being through spiritual practice and intense concentration. Here we get another reference to the spiritual and religious overtones the story seems to be presenting to us. The series explains tulpas, or as they're referred to here, thought forms, as a physical manifestation of a being that represents a person, emotion, or even another deeply energized psychological state. However, we're given more detailed information about thought forms, including the fact that these beings exist in a semi-physical form as not only an extension of the person, but as its own independent and sentient entity. We are then told that traditional thought forms also seem to be able to possess a considerable amount of influence in the real world, and that while they do achieve a physical state eventually, they appear as more of an apparition with brief manifestations, similarly to how a ghost or even a poltergeist would behave. Thought forms are even cited as being able to speak through short words and phrases, communicate through technology, and move things around the house. It also brings into question whether what we know as ghosts are actually thought forms. The theory behind this is that the energy and intense emotions a person experiences during grief, while also continuously focusing on their memory, creates a thought form, which is a solid theory considering the fact that the series mentions that people don't even have to be consciously aware that they're creating a thought form for one to come into existence in the first place.
Rather than a deceased person's energy being left behind after death, it's possible, and indeed likely, that these paranormal entities are actually thought forms that are unintentionally created by those individuals that the deceased has left behind, who spend inordinate amounts of time in deeply emotional states, where their mental capacity is largely occupied by a powerful focus on the departed individual. In other words, as these are the ideal conditions from which thought forms are born, people may very well create their own ghosts and hauntings.
Thought forms are able to become physical, tangible beings, especially through continued periods of intense grieving. As they gain more influence from those around them, i.e. perceiving their existence and believing that they are there, the thought forms eventually become their own autonomous being. And of course, the US government, being the entity that they are, saw this process and realized that they were more than likely able to harness the ability to create thought forms for what they say is a beneficial way to aid in American society and keep cities safe.
This is where Unit 13's interest comes in. We've sought to answer a very important question. Can thought forms be created in a manner that would benefit American society and help keep American citizens safe?
But that's more than likely a cover for their true intentions. Or if you're Meat Canyon, your interpretation of what the US government wants to use it for may be different.
And also, while you're at it, if you have the time, can you think about an 8-foot-tall copy of Gwyneth Paltrow that has
Can you think of an
triple
8-foot-tall
M chest?
Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow with missile titties, and she has a big goop candle coming out of her hands. Her goop candle that says it smells like her vagina. Could you go ahead and do that? Can you can you manifest Gwyneth Paltrow? And to me, she's really skinny, but to everyone else, she's really, really fat.
Also, can she have a penis?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you. Just like combining all of her movies into one character.
but also that everyone else doesn't see it, so I don't have to deal with the
Can you make her
repercussions
invisible and all I can see her? She calls herself Pepper Potts.
Actually, you know what? Scratch that. Robert Downey Jr., 8 feet tall,
Yeah.
huge
All right, never mind.
rack.
Kill this guy. He knows too much. Kill him.
The video then goes on to state that it would realistically take many years to create a significant amount of thought forms through the traditional way mentioned above.
Unfortunately, the practice of intentionally creating a thought form by traditional methods would undoubtedly take years and years of devout mental training. So, Project Stargate has enlisted a world-renowned authority in thought forms, a man named Dr. Bernard Hayes, to oversee a number of the operations related to Unit 13's work.
Dr. Bernard Hayes is a doctor who was interested in studying psychology and consciousness, specifically Jungian psychology, and is listed as the overseer of the Thoughtform experiments. We're then introduced to the Thoughtform manifester, a machine that is described as being able to create truly independent and self-sustaining thoughtform entities from the minds of select, willing participants. Now, I want to take a second to note just how much thought and effort was put into this specific project. Not only was the US government spending copious amounts of money on Project Stargate, but they also partnered with SimioDyn and hired some of the best and brightest minds who have studied human consciousness and psychology to create a machine for essentially mass-producing expendable people. It's quite an unnerving realization to understand that they were essentially desperate to get a hold of this ability, but why were they trying so hard to get to this point? Well, at this time, it's not known to us why, but there's still quite a bit more information to get through and piece together, most of which we haven't even gotten to yet. Yeah, it's gonna be a long video, so get comfortable. I mean, you already saw the timestamp. Back to the Thoughtform manifester, we're then told that these entities are created from the deepest recesses of the human mind, and as such, are able to appear in any configuration. However, we're then given an assurance that Thoughtforms are docile in nature, and while they may try to make contact, they will not harm you, which, considering what happens later in the series, is a big bunch of baloney, but I digress.
There's no reason to be afraid, however. All thought forms are docile by nature, and while they may look or behave in a frightening manner, and though they are capable of making physical contact, they pose no threat to humans.
We see the recording distort when it discusses the nature of these entities, and if you've watched enough analog horror series, you know that this sort of thing implies deception and manipulation. I also had a thought that Thoughtforms manipulated the orientation tapes we see in the series in order for humans to lower their guards and be more trusting around them. We're then told that the newly created Thoughtforms get transported away to the Thoughtform chambers where they cannot escape from.
Once your session in the Thoughtform manifester is completed, your Thoughtform will be securely transported directly into a containment chamber. Thoughtforms are unable to pass through the barrier and will not be capable of causing you any issues.
We also get more video distortion here, further implying that deception and the sobering possibility that a Thoughtform could indeed escape their containment chambers, after which we are then told a list of side effects that could rival current commercials for medication in the United States.
There are some very rare potential side effects that may result from your session. These side effects include increased tiredness, loss of balance, dizziness, insomnia, vomiting, episodes of temporary amnesia, and mild hallucinations. These side effects, if present, will clear up within 72 hours of your session and are simply signs of your brain recalibrating to the real world.
Again, more video distortion occurs, telling us that whoever made this orientation tape is not being truthful to the nature and toll of these Thoughtform manifestation experiments. We then hear that the viewer, or in this case Alex's session, has been scheduled, and they need to make sure to do some mind exercises before the scheduled test date. The video then concludes by asking the viewer to insert TF2, waking your subconscious, but we have a lot more to get to before we get to see that tape. Like a lot more. This video opens with a shot of someone being a weirdo and filming a house from the outside. We can see a person moving through the window before the camera pans to the left, and we see someone seemingly looking right at the person holding the camera before the lights in the house turn off. The cameraman makes the confounding decision to walk up to the house and analyze it, seemingly looking for a way in. We then see them walk up to a window and look inside. The person decides to keep walking, coming upon another window that looks into an empty room. The camera is then placed on the ground, and the intruder removes the screen panel and picks up the camera, wherein they enter the house through the window. Here we can see that the empty room is actually the basement. The video immediately cuts to sounds of a struggle and screaming for a few seconds before our intruder walks back outside and zooms in on the moon, which honestly gives Gemini Home Entertainment and Local 58 vibes. After this segment ends, we're shown a commercial advertising the premiere of the Max Headroom show. The commercial gets interrupted by a local emergency broadcast alert warning residents of Northern Berkshire, Massachusetts of something going on.
Premieres after moonlighting tomorrow.
We interrupt our current program at the request of the Massachusetts State Police. This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. All normal broadcasting has been discontinued during the emergency. This station will broadcast official information, news, and instruction for Northern Berkshire County, Massachusetts, after the following tone.
At 3:34 a.m., Massachusetts State Police confirmed the presence of a potential group of active and unidentified home invaders who have targeted 49 residences since approximately 11:15 p.m. last night. The attacks appear to be random, spanning across the towns of North Adams, Cheshire, Savoy, and Windsor. Residents are urged to take the following actions immediately. Wake all occupants of your home. Lock all doors and windows. Close all curtains and blinds. Gather in a secure area of your home where multiple exits are available to prevent yourself from being cornered. Additionally, residents are urged to arm themselves with a blunt object or firearm if available and licensed. Only resort to self-protection if a suspect has entered your home, poses an active threat to you or your family, and you are unable to escape safely.
The broadcast then continues to advise residents who are not currently at home to not return home for the time being. Rather, they're urged to shelter in place or head to what sounds like a local Cinemark where local law enforcement is there to establish a safe zone.
If you are currently away from home, we are urging you not to return home at this time. Shelter in place where you are. If you are currently not in a secure area or in a vehicle, immediately head to your closest 7-Mart. Each 7-Mart location is currently being used as a safe area and has police stationed for your protection.
We're then told that police are unable to provide a physical description of these assailants, and as such, residents should avoid opening their doors to anyone they don't immediately recognize, as well as avoid searching for or confronting these suspects as they're considered armed and extremely dangerous.
Remain in your secure area until the threat has been resolved. Police are currently unable to determine a physical description of any of the assailants involved in these attacks. It is strongly advised you do not open your home to anyone you do not intimately recognize. Do not attempt to search for or engage with any suspects. The suspects are considered armed and extremely dangerous.
As the broadcast concludes, it once again reminds residents to shelter in place and barricade their exits, while also notifying that armed police officers will be making the rounds, and any interference in their investigation may result in lethal force. So nothing new there.
Do not leave your secure area unless necessary. This is for your safety. Law enforcement will be armed and patrolling your area. Interfering with this investigation could result in lethal force being inadvertent.
We then cut to someone listening to the broadcast in the background while they look outside. Shortly after they peek out, we can hear distant screaming before... Just before the video ends, several images interlaced with video distortion and static flash on the screen of two different entities, one with a cracked mask-like face and another of a seemingly desiccated skull before the video then ends. And we're left to wonder, who was the person at the window? This tape is the first appearance of both of these entities, and we'll see plenty more instances of that thought form with the white cracked mask, but the second entity, the one with the desiccated looking skull, that one seems to have only been seen about maybe twice in the series so far, and we'll get into those in a bit. The script is so deceptive because it says I'm on tape 5 out of 12, but I'm on page 7 of 50. This tape begins with audio of what sounds like a prenatal wellness visit and an ultrasound to check on the progress of the development. We hear an ultrasound tech named Wanda greet the patient, Tiffany, and they begin making casual conversation.
Well, hello again, Tiffany.
Oh, hi Wanda. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. No dad this time?
No, unfortunately, he couldn't get off work today. So I'm gonna have to call him on a payphone to let him know all the details as soon as we're done.
Tiffany's tone here is interesting, as it seems like she wasn't expecting Alex to be as excited as he is to be a dad, and then makes a point to ensure Wanda that they're both indeed excited to be parents, not just her husband.
He's excited to be a dad, huh?
Oh, yes, he certainly is. We both can't wait to be parents.
We then learn that Tiffany and her husband have been together since high school, and they've also picked out a name for their son, Max.
Aw, and you said you've been together since high school, right?
Yep.
That's so sweet. And have you decided on a name for your baby boy yet?
Yep, we're going with Max.
Ooh, Max, huh? That's a nice, strong name.
That's why my fiance wanted it so bad. He says it'll help make him strong right off the bat.
That's a pretty good way of thinking about it. So let's see how strong little Max is so you can hurry up and make that call.
Yes, please.
As Wanda begins the ultrasound, we see Max just chilling, hanging out, before something happens.
Okay, hopefully this isn't too cold.
No, it's okay.
There he is. He's definitely a growing boy, that's for sure. And you're both looking really good.
Oh, I love hearing that.
Let's get some measurements to see exactly how much he's grown.
What was that?
Wanda and Tiffany both react to the glitch and resume the ultrasound. Wanda begins to comment on how she's suddenly having trouble finding Max, which only fuels Tiffany's anxiety.
I don't know. I've never seen that before. Maybe something to do with the power.
Okay.
This is a bit strange.
What? What's strange?
Nothing to worry about or anything. Just having some trouble finding the baby all of a sudden.
Maybe the machine messed up?
Possibly. But I can still see everything else. It's just not picking up the baby for some reason.
Has this ever happened before?
Well, sometimes babies can move into certain positions that are hard to see.
But you can't see my baby at all?
I'm looking. Don't worry, he's definitely here. You know what? Why don't we just see if we can borrow another machine, okay? There has to be something wrong with this one. I'll be right back.
Wanda concludes that the ultrasound machine must be malfunctioning, and as she goes to get another, she sees another ultrasound tech who has also gone to find another machine.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
We see an additional newspaper article clip during the ultrasound machine glitch, and if we pause and read it, we can see it details mysterious events surrounding pregnancies, implying that Tiffany was not the only unfortunate person whose pregnancy was taken. However, we also see that people who previously were not pregnant suddenly became pregnant, which sounds very horrifying. There's not too much else to say here though, as this seems to be a setup for another tape that's further down the line. We open back up to the SimioDyn USA facility our mysterious hacker visited from the very first episode. We hear the credentials of a Frank Porter being used and accepted, leading to an archive of voicemail messages left for Frank over the course of 6 days, from March 24th to March 30th by a miner named Paul Morelli. Here we see details aside from the date and time of the voicemail messages left for Frank Porter, including the name of Paul's mining and construction company and the purpose of hiring during them. There's a redacted portion of information pertaining to the project itself. Paul begins the messages by informing Frank that excavation has been going well, but that him and his crew found tunnels deep in the mountains. He then goes on to explain that it's obvious people have been to the mountain before, noting the presence of man-made carvings in the stone. We also learn that Frank told Paul to call him if anything strange happens during the excavation process.
Ran into somewhat of an issue today. We came across these tunnels inside the mountain, pretty deep in, but well, this is gonna sound a little crazy, but he told me to call if anything strange came up, and I figured this qualifies. People have been here before. Some obviously man-made shit in there, like carvings and stone. This shit looks ancient, like real old. I took a crew in to look through it, but since part of the tunnels caved in some time ago, we're gonna just have to bust through it regardless. But I still wanted to make you aware of it. Anyways, I'll keep you in the loop. Thanks.
The second message begins with Paul informing Frank that the excavation has been going well. However, it seems like some of the crew members have gotten sick. Paul wonders whether it's due to a stomach bug, but then brushes it off as he continues to discuss the progress of the project.
Hey Frank, it's Paul. Just calling to tell you the day might be a bit slower than usual. Unfortunately, a number of the crew are sick as dogs. Not really sure what kind of stomach bug's going around or what, but we'll do our best to pick up the slack. I'm calling in some guys who have a day off, so hopefully things will get a little closer to normal, you know?
It's also here that we learn the name of the mountain they're excavating at, Mount Greylock. Mount Greylock is a real mountain in Massachusetts, which also features a war veteran memorial at the top. On the memorial, it is noted that there are several different inscriptions written, including, "They were faithful unto even death," and "Of those immortal dead, who live again in the minds made better by our presence." Eerily enough, does relate to the thought form and tulpa aspects of the story. Paul then casually drops the horrific development that those collapsed tunnels they found the other day have not only been completely cleared of rubble, but they now have lights adorning the passageway into the mountain. This puzzles him as he mentions he wanted to see if Frank had sent anyone to go and do that after hearing his last message, but then points out that the night crew said that nobody came by to do anything like that. However, the night crew told Paul that they had apparently been seeing something in the woods surrounding the excavation site, that it looked like something was running around. Paul chalks it up to a deer being curious at all the noise and activity going on at the site, but it seems the night crew doesn't agree.
But a few of the guys said they'd seen something running around in the woods surrounding the site. I figured it's probably a deer or whatever, but seeing all the ruckus we're making out here, you know? But they all insisted it was something else. Something like a real tall man.
He says that the night crew said it's something else. Paul then ends the message saying they're going to avoid the tunnels for now until they hear back from Frank.
Might just be some environmentalist moron trying to cause some shit, but you know, he ain't done nothing, so I told him to keep focused on the project. For safety's sake, we're gonna avoid the tunnel until I hear back from you. Alright, bye now.
The third message comes in just a few hours later at nearly 5 p.m., where Paul informs Frank that the photographer he had just sent finished his job and left. However, he noted something strange about the photographer, as Paul says that he was fine when he arrived to take photos, but by the time that he was done, they had to practically carry him back to his car, worrying that he may have caught whatever was going around.
Hey Frank, it's Paul again. The guy you sent out to take photos just left, but well, he seemed totally fine when he got here, but we practically had to carry him back to his car when he was done. I don't know if he caught whatever's going around, but figured you should know.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. Paul then goes on to describe that the crew found a whole bunch of old things down in the mountain tunnels, and their hired archaeologists describe the artifacts as old weapons and trinkets, mentioning that Paul will have him draft up a report on the objects. Keep this in mind for later too.
Also, we found some really old shit down there, Frank. Now, I ain't no historian, but we got a guy on the crew who used to do archaeology work or whatever, and I don't know. But I guess there's some old artifacts down there, like weapons and trinkets and whatever. I'll have him draft up a report for you and send it your way, because I feel like he'd be interested, and he can explain all this shit better than I could anyways. His name's Arnold Rivers. That's about it.
Message 4 opens with Paul immediately on edge, saying that something's not right. Not only have the crew gotten sicker, but now Paul finally saw what it was the night crew saw in the woods.
Frank, something ain't right here. Crew's getting worse, more sick. I feel okay so far, but I don't know how long that's gonna last. I saw that thing the guys have been talking about last night, stalking around in the tree line. I swear it had a face. Anyways, just call me back as soon as you can, Frank.
Our next message doesn't come until 2 days later, with Paul immediately stating that their food had turned rotten and completely spoiled, seemingly overnight. He even makes a point to state that there were no issues with storage and refrigeration, and that it's still the end of March. And for all my fellow New Englanders, y'all can agree that it's still pretty fucking cold at the end of March up there. Despite all of this, Paul says that the food looks like it's been left out in the heat for weeks.
All our food is rotten, totally spoiled and covered in maggots. It was perfectly fine and stored. There wasn't any problems with the generator, even if we lost power. I mean, it's the end of March. All our food looks like it's been left out in the heat for weeks. No idea what's going on. Please call me back.
He ends the message pleading for Frank to call him back, but our sixth message comes only a few short hours later. This time we hear that everyone saw that thing again stalking in the tree line.
It's Paul. We saw it again. Something out here with us. It's in the woods. And it's watching us, goddammit. It ain't no animal either. Who are you guys gonna put up those fancy hunting cameras and see if we can catch anything? Maybe locals fucking with us? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
The message is quickly interrupted by a hunting camera picking up movement. There's a few things to note here about this specific section. For one, you can immediately see SimioDyn USA in the bottom right corner, but slightly grayed out. You can also see in the top right corner that it says, "For military use only." Now, I tried to look super hard at this, but as of me recording this video, I can't really see what it was that the camera had picked up. But I want to guess that it was maybe something back here in the left side towards the trees. After this camera section ends, we cut to the answering machine again, showing that message 7 seems to be corrupted and cannot be played. Interestingly, it doesn't even show a timestamp or a date. The screen here flashes a few times as well, and if you pause, you can see that the once redacted section of the screen now shows Unit 13 as the name of the facility that is being built. This tells us that SimioDyn and the US Army hired Paul's Mining and Excavation Company in order to dig out the tunnels in Mount Greylock to turn that site into Unit 13, where the Thoughtform experiments will more than likely be taking place. After this happens, we get another hunting camera clip. This time it looks like a lens flare can be seen before the footage returns to normal. The 8th message comes on the 29th, another 2 days since Paul called Frank about their food going bad and spoiling. This time, Paul cuts right to the chase. He tells Frank that not only are a majority of the crew now sick, but some have become completely unresponsive. Naturally, Paul and the rest of the healthy crew tried to contact emergency services for help, but Paul said that the lines just keep ringing and ringing.
Frank, it's Paul. Holy shit, well, a lot of the crew here is sick now, and they're sort of like unresponsive. We tried emergency contacts for them, but they just keep ringing. The phones, they just kept ringing and ringing and ringing. Nobody picked up from any number we tried. Nobody picked up. No answer machines either. Made a call to the hospital and same thing. Just ringing. Just tried 911, still nothing. I figured the phones were fucked up, but the machine actually picked up.
Unfortunately, it's at this point where Paul comes to the realization that he may have finally succumbed to whatever mysterious ailment struck the other crew members. He says his skin feels tight, he has a lot of pressure behind his eyes, and his teeth feel like they're humming or vibrating. Desperate for answers and with nowhere else to turn, Paul decides that he needs to go into the mountain that night to find out what it is that's making everyone basically lose their collective minds.
I think I caught whatever's going around. My skin, it feels tight, a lot of pressure behind my eyes. My teeth feel like they're humming, vibrating. You know what? First I'll start when we came across that tunnel. I feel like I need to figure out what's down there. I think whatever's down there could help my crew. But most of all, I feel like something really bad's gonna happen if I don't go down. So I'm going down tonight.
The message ends with Paul seemingly starting to go feral, and the video immediately shows us the final hunting cam footage. A few more brief lens flares can be seen before you can see what looks like something backing away from the lens or uncovering it, revealing that whatever it was that was there was actually mimicking the environment to obscure what was happening. Our ninth and final message is very brief, so I'll just go ahead and play it for you. After this message ends, we cut back to the virtual answering assistant, where it now seems corrupted and difficult to read. The message from the machine is even more ominous. And of course, I'll be nice and turn it down because this part does get loud.
This is the end of your messages.
So, unfortunately, Paul descended the mountain and seemingly completely lost his mind alongside his crew. And we can even see the damage to his face that is most likely related to what he was feeling earlier. The tight skin, pressure behind his eyes, and of course, his vibrating teeth. And the video closes on one last hunting camera clip, which shows someone with a cracked-looking mask eerily staring into the camera. So yeah, if this is what my crew and I were seeing in the tree lines that night, I'm getting us all out of there because, dude, the money cannot be that good for you to stick around and just brush everything off. I know Meat Canyon kind of goofed on the series due to Paul being so cavalier about all the weird shit that's happening, but not only do I think it's intentionally campy humor, but I would even go as far as to suggest it's a subtle nod towards the brainwashing capabilities that Mount Greylock has. Something which we know now seems to be of vital interest to the US Army and SimioDyn. I also didn't intend to leave this section of the video out. Truth be told, I quite literally just forgot it existed in this tape and was wondering how and why I hadn't seen this clip yet in my watch through. Anyway, I figured it fit in better at the end of the analysis for this tape because of that point I made of the allure of Mount Greylock and whatever resides within it. In the very beginning of the video, we can see Dr. Bernard Hayes, one of the overseers of Project Stargate and the Greylock Project, giving a speech at a symposium on Jungian psychology and the manifestation of consciousness, which the title of the symposium is eerily on the nose, but whatever. We can see that this symposium is taking place in New York City on October 4th, 1981, with the end date being October 11th, a good 6 years before the events we just witnessed on Mount Greylock. Here, Dr. Bernard Hayes discusses an interesting topic, which is the pursuit of intelligence and knowledge to finally reach, quote, the one called God.
Humanity has fought tirelessly past through a great many trials of intellectual fortitude to achieve but one singular goal. A goal countless men have withered away and dying in pursuit of, leaving their towers of work behind to be climbed upon by coming generations. Higher and higher they ascend, so that we will at last reach the one called God.
He then elaborates on what humanity intends to do once we reach that apex.
And there, on his apex of infinite knowledge and power, you will approach and look him in the eye. As an equal.
We hear applause, and that's when the video cuts to the virtual answering machine section. The parallels here are very interesting, as it reminds me of the Tower of Babel, which is, you guessed it, a Bible story that is intended to serve as an example of what happens when humanity becomes too prideful and ambitious. The story goes that at one point in humanity, we all spoke the same language and had the same customs and cultures. However, humanity began to construct a city and tower that was intended to reach God. God felt that this was blasphemous, and so he fragmented human language, which prevented humanity from communicating with each other, and thus could not continue constructing the tower. Here in Greylock, Dr. Hayes discusses how humanity has always had this goal, to stand with God as equals, but rather than SimioDyn and the US government trying to build a tower to a deity, they're instead trying to tame some primordial and esoteric force and weaponize it, which, of course, results in these unintended consequences, something which seems to be a very prominent theme in Greylock so far. This is a shorter tape, as it opens on a news broadcast featuring an anchor named Dawn Wright, who mentions that authorities are continuing to investigate the recent rise in crimes and break-ins that have plagued Northern Berkshire County over the past few weeks. However, Dawn reports that the culprits of this group are part of an anti-American militia group and were engaging in organized crime. Allegedly.
Authorities have since confirmed that the attacks were, in fact, part of an organized criminal effort and have been attributed to a local anti-American militia group operating out of western Massachusetts called...
The name of this supposed group is obscured from us due to TV static, but Dawn then mentions that authorities have indeed made numerous arrests in connection to these break-ins and continue to release statements meant to ensure that the public feels safe and secure again. It then cuts to a brief interview with what seems to be the chief of police, and behind him you can see a poster on the wall that shows the memorial I briefly mentioned earlier that sits on top of Mount Greylock. Dawn then closes his report by saying that thankfully the efforts of law enforcement have allowed life to return back to normal for residents. Except that doesn't actually seem to be the case, considering the broadcast immediately glitches on back to normal, and we can see an immediate cut showing conjoined twins, implying that the issues with pregnancies were about to begin. Remember, Tiffany and Alex lost Max after the events of Sleeping Dogs, the last tape. There's also the caption from tape 6 that reads, "Do you know what they did up there? These are the consequences," directly implying that whatever the miners, SimioDyn, and the US Army did in Mount Greylock is causing all of these issues with complicated pregnancies, sudden new pregnancies, and pregnancy loss, and other things that I'll get to in a sec. Much more horrific things. This is only further confirmed by the brief flashes of articles that we see. One features a photo of Alex and Tiffany with a caption that reads, "Engaged couple Alex Marsh, 28, and Tiffany Crisaldi, 26, sit together as they discuss the baffling loss of their unborn son." And another article that cites a private investigator named Jim Melgren saying, "There are horrifying reports. Healthy, grown adults becoming deformed, growing extra limbs, teeth growing out of their scalp, people developing severe mental conditions or even sicknesses." The last line is cut off, but it more than likely says that doctors have never seen this kind of thing before, which again relates back to the caption from tape 6. After the video and the article images flash by, we finally get the iconic ending scene of Dawn Wright pictured with a good amount of his face seemingly just sloughed off, with the word liar in all caps written next to him.
To normal for residents of Berkshire County.
This next tape picks up immediately after Dawn Wright's mangled face shows up on screen, but it switches to a screen with the monument of Mount Greylock and the text, "We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by." It's also worth noting that the news broadcast is on Channel 13, a reference to Unit 13, and the implication that everything SimioDyn and the US Army are doing is permeating into the general public. We then cut to an audio recording of a meeting between Alan Rosenbaum, the GBS executive, and two of the producers for Dawn Right Tonight, Samantha Grenick and Liam Hollander. Side note, do you see how much face these three are serving? Look at Alan's pout. It's truly immaculate, innit? It's like someone gave Mike's Mike a suit, hair gel, and told him to serve the fiercest look ever. The meeting goes about as you'd expect. Alan is loudly yelling at and berating the producers for this broadcast that went, and I quote, "completely tits up," before demanding an explanation for what just flashed on the TV.
I've been getting chewed out by our asshole CIA liaison for the past 2 hours. What the fuck happened?
We're looking into it, sir, but we experienced no issues with the broadcast on our end, so our engineers believe that the signal was hijacked before even reaching the transmitter, but once we started receiving phone calls from viewers, we switched to a backup transmitter.
But by then, the hijacker had already said everything they wanted to say, hadn't they?
Yes, sir.
Samantha states that they're looking into it, but that the engineers stated that the station didn't experience any issues. They believe that their signals were instead hijacked and sent prior to the transmission. They didn't notice any issues until they got concerned calls from viewers, and at that point, they had switched to a backup transmitter. Alan, still furious, points out that at this point the damage had already been done and that they made us look like a fucking joke, and during our most popular show.
What a complete fuck up! They made us look like a fucking joke! And during our most popular show.
It's at this point that Alan realizes that Dawn isn't sitting with them. He wonders aloud where he is, and Liam chimes in saying that he tried to reach him multiple times, but he wasn't answering his phone or his pager. Liam even said that they tried asking people if they've seen Dawn, but they had no luck there either.
Speaking of which, Dawn, where the fuck is he? I cannot get hold of him, and he needs to get in here and read a statement to help clean up this fucking mess.
Well, we've been trying to reach him. We've called him multiple times. We've tried his pager. We've asked around to see if anyone's heard from him, but nothing. Right now we've got Gerald standing in for him tonight if Don doesn't show.
You've been to his house?
Well, no. I just thought that maybe he'd be upset if I did that. So.
Get in your fucking car and go to his fucking house! I don't care if you kick down his front door and drag him here by his ear. You bring him into the studio. Do you understand?
Yes, Mr. Rosenbaum. Of course, I'll do that right now.
There's some real powerful people depending on us right now. They need us to manage the response to these events, to let the public know what's going on, and the last thing we need is it going wider than it already fucking has. So do what you need to do, or I'm going to replace you with some producers who actually know how to produce a fucking show!
After Alan demands that Liam go to Dawn's house, it immediately cuts to the same voice from the SimioDyn terminal we heard in the very first video, though it says that the file our mysterious user is trying to access has been destroyed and can no longer be retrieved or executed. Some distortion then happens, and the video then says, "Warning. Anomalous file detected. This file should not exist. Are you sure you wish to proceed?" The file opens and we hear that it's titled Arnold Rivers Personal Log, Final. Now, if that name isn't familiar to you, it's the same name of the archaeologist who went up to Mount Greylock and investigated the ancient artifacts and the tunnel that led to them. His log is pretty long, but it's substantially detailed. The first thing we note is the date that this log was recorded, which is April 8th, 1987. The events at Mount Greylock occurred over the course of nearly a week at the end of March, specifically from the 24th to the 30th. So it's been a little over a week since Arnold went into Mount Greylock to investigate the artifacts. Arnold went on to detail that his extensive experience in anthropology, archaeology, as well as experience in excavations were the main reasons he was hired for the Mount Greylock project by Paul after he secured the government contract for the job. He also notes that he believes his life is in danger and is recording this log because he doesn't think he has much time left. His main goal with this log is to leave some record of his findings before it's too late. He begins by detailing his experience at Mount Greylock, starting on the 24th of March. Here, Arnold describes the crew coming across the tunnels that he described as containing a multitude of ancient markings and artifacts. The next thing he says, though, is especially strange considering what Paul told Frank in his messages.
On March 24th, our crew came across tunnels in the mountain that had a multitude of ancient markings and artifacts. On March 25th, Paul cleared the interior of the mountain and asked me, accompanied by a small crew, to look through the tunnels and record notes on what I was able to recognize.
That being said, I don't know how the hell this happened, but the section of the tunnel here caved in is clear. The tunnel's been wired up with a few lights, too. Wanted to see if maybe you sent someone in while we were off shift. My crew said you didn't, but, I didn't see anybody else either, so...
Arnold states that on the 25th of March, the next day after they discovered the tunnels, that Paul himself went and cleared them, as well as hung up the lights that lined the walls in the tunnels. He then states that Paul asked him and a small crew to look through the tunnels and make notes of anything that he recognizes. That way he can present a summary of his findings to Frank Porter, one of the directors for Project Greylock. Arnold says that at the time, he kept the details of his findings to himself, because what they had found in that tunnel was not normal.
I kept this to myself at the time, but what we discovered in that mountain was not normal. Not only did I see the impact it was having on the crew, but certain aspects of my findings did not make any sense.
Arnold goes on to describe his bewilderment at seeing various artifacts, but on closer inspection, these artifacts seem to be pre-colonial. There were some Native American artifacts from different tribes in there, which is to be expected, but other artifacts were present there too, and that's something that Arnold couldn't explain. He mentioned these other artifacts that appeared to be Mesoamerican, while others were described as Clovis in nature. Now, I didn't know this prior to researching for this video, but when Arnold mentions Clovis, he's referring to the hunter-gatherer groups known as the Clovis people, a civilization that was around in the Paleo-Indian period. This is a major revelation because it proves that people have been coming to the tunnels of Mount Greylock since at least 11,000 BCE. And yes, at least that early. Because Arnold further clarifies that there are other artifacts he found that could suggest that even earlier civilizations have been coming here, like Paleo-American cultures that people haven't even started studying yet. Even more shocking, Arnold found artifacts dating back to the pre-Columbian period, with the theory of transoceanic contact before Columbus reaching the Americas seemingly being proven right in front of Arnold's eyes. I'm not just talking from the Caribbean either. Arnold goes on to mention that these artifacts came from the ancient Chinese, Arabic, Indian, Roman, Spanish, Vikings, and even Greek and Egyptian artifacts were found here. Arnold notes that if this were any other time, any other day, any other context, even, that the findings from the mountain would have changed all of world history as we know it today, which is exciting, being able to discover such a huge nugget of historical information, and Arnold admits that he felt this too. But then he says that his excitement was quickly replaced by a sobering and looming fear and anxiety.
Our findings that day alone would change world history as we know it today. I'll admit, the anthropologist in me was thrilled. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I figured it had to be a hoax, but I'm confident that it's all authentic. But my excitement was soon replaced with a looming fear and anxiety. How could such a place be so important to so many cultures for so long?
There has to be a reason why these artifacts from various cultures are here in the first place, and why this specific place was so important to so many cultures for such a long period of time. Arnold says that he thinks that there is something immense there, and that whatever it is, it's the reason he left the project. Arnold goes on to describe how the tunnels all connected to a series of chambers deep within Mount Greylock, which is where the majority of these artifacts were found. He goes on to further detail that he found old baskets of herbs and spices, pottery, weapons, armor, talismans, and other religious items in those chambers.
Countless other things, but all of it was there purposely, as offerings.
The log is suddenly interrupted by a title card for an upcoming broadcast on Channel 13 titled Cosmic Mysteries, a detailed look into how our Earth's moon came to be. Before the program starts, we get a broadcast lineup with Dawn Right Tonight premiering at 9, Night Hiking, episode 13, Mount Greylock at 10 p.m., and Deep State's episode 733 at 11 p.m. This all appears to be taking place the day of the broadcast hijacking, as we know that Alan yelled at Samantha and Liam to get Dawn to read a statement for that night's show. As for the show Night Hiking, especially with it being the 13th episode and having that focus on Mount Greylock, it makes me wonder if that's what the next tape in the series is. We currently have 12 tapes as of the time I'm recording this, and I really hope that Rob doesn't release another one before I'm done, because I swear to God I will scream. And I'm wondering if the 13th tape will feature a more in-depth look at the mountains and possibly Unit 13, a much deeper look than we got in the second tape to the mountain. Lastly, the show Deep States is likely referencing Jim Melgren's conspiracy talk show dedicated to government accountability and transparency. Boy, could we use one of those right now. Moving on, Cosmic Mysteries begins, and this is what it says.
It was billions of years ago, when our planet was still mostly fire and rock, that a Mars-sized planet that had been drifting through our solar system collided directly with the Earth. The impact was so powerful and violent that the rogue planet was blown into countless pieces of debris. This debris collected to form our moon. Many of the pieces of the unknown planet remain inside the Earth to this day.
So this clip directly tells us that a rogue planet smashed into Earth billions of years ago, and the impact was so devastating that it blew that rogue planet into countless pieces that later would come together and form our moon. Through distortion, it also mentions that pieces of this rogue planet may still be within our own planet today. The program abruptly cuts off and switches to an audio log of a 911 call Liam made. In this call, we hear Liam unfortunately tell the 911 operator that he needs help because someone broke into his co-worker's house and he found his body. This co-worker, of course, is Dawn Wright, the anchor who was called a liar. Strangely enough, his corpse was found in the exact way he showed up on screen, with a good chunk of his face missing, including his nose, mouth, and an eye. His other eye appears to be completely white, and that's a little detail that I want you to keep in mind for the very final tape that we have at the end of this video. The way he was found also looks as if whatever attacked him was taking huge bites out of him or ripping those parts of his face off. Not to get all Dexter Morgan, famed blood spatter analyst and infamous serial killer the Bay Harbor Butcher here, but the blood spatter really does imply that he was attacked in a brutal way and that he died quickly. In another abrupt cut, we're once again greeted with Arnold Rivers further discussing his findings within Mount Greylock. He mentions that he found various altars within these chambers. Notably, these altars were found to have been constructed with stone from the mountain itself, implying that the mountain stone must contain some sort of esoteric or anomalous property that these cultures were using as a sort of talisman for worship. Arnold also noted evidence of an abundance of both animal and human sacrifices, and the walls of the chambers themselves were covered in unrecognizable symbols. Even to someone as seasoned as Arnold, he points out that it specifically made him sick to look at. Arnold makes sure to clarify that he is not, nor has he ever been, a religious man, but that there was something in that mountain, some oppressive force that virtually every culture in the history of our planet has been worshipping for billions of years, but he doesn't know why. Doesn't that just make your blood run cold? Think about it. You uncover the equivalent of an ancient cathedral and sacrificial network that, for some reason, has evidence of every single culture being there and worshipping some unknown deity or force. Normally, this wouldn't disturb you, but ever since this discovery, unexplainable and horrific things have been happening to people. People are changing and becoming monsters. And for some reason, worshipping whatever this thing is seems to be the way to avoid the changes. I think I try to move as far away from Massachusetts as possible. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, Arnold describes this feeling as similar to being trapped in a fever dream. He swears he could hear a voice and even recalls feeling compelled to go further into the mountain to speak with whatever entity was there, and that ever since that day he hasn't felt right. Keep in mind this is about a week, give or take, after the events of Sleeping Dogs, so whatever this force is seems to have gained a grip on Arnold due to his presence inside the mountain, even if it was extremely brief. This is noticeably different from how the crew members changed from a longer exposure, and we'll get to that in a second. But Arnold mentions that he keeps hearing a droning sound in his head all day and all night, not letting him sleep. And while those with tinnitus probably felt that on a molecular level, Arnold brushes it off, saying that he informed Frank Porter in his report that the archaeological findings in the mountain are of monumental historical importance, and that there is certainly more to be discovered, thus officially recommending that construction in that site be halted. It's not like Arnold is lying here either. These artifacts all being here as offerings inside of sacrificial chambers covered with weird, unrecognizable symbols should 1000% be left alone. But it's also classic horror movie rules to never disturb ancient ritual or sacrificial sites, much less any and all relics and artifacts that are within them. But of course, the government being the government decides, nah, don't worry about it, we'll just bomb them or something. And even Arnold concedes that he doesn't have any official authority over the project and figured he would be ignored. So imagine Arnold's surprise, or lack thereof, when Frank Porter calls him on the evening of March 28th, completely disregarding his concerns and briefly discussing with him about coming back to work on the Greylock project because he's an essential asset, even insisting to do so after Arnold declined, offering a substantial raise for his involvement on the project. Not only that, but Frank told Arnold that he wanted him to run his own specialized team that would work to clear those chambers and tunnels of the artifacts before resuming construction, which is, again, so funny to imagine what that conversation would have been like. I know Arnold didn't fully tell him the nature of those chambers, but how are you going to hear that report and then decide, let's disturb the ancient ritual site anyway? Before I go on another tangent, Arnold does the same thing and declines the offer once again, saying that he won't put a price on his sanity or his health, especially since he was seeing firsthand what those tunnels were doing to the excavation crew. Speaking of what happened to the crew, I'm going to preface this right now with a body horror content warning because Rob and his team went absolutely ballistic with these photos, but one of them makes me kind of giggle because I'm pretty sure it looks like an old photo of Samuel L. Jackson. Anyway, let's talk about what happened to the excavation crew now, shall we? The video cuts from Arnold's log to a presentation titled Morelli Greylock Event Survivors, Group C. This presentation shows us the patients before and after being exposed for a significant amount of time to whatever was sealed inside of that mountain. Our first patient is named Thomas J. Rockford. Pretty handsome guy, right? Well, this is your brain normally, and this is your brain on evil eldritch brainwashing. The notes here state that Thomas is communicative, prone to violent outbursts, is given heavy sedation as treatment, and is only to be communicated with when he is restrained or via intercom. And as far as malformations go, he got pretty lucky, considering what horrors await us. He seems to have lost color in his skin, his hair is dry and unkempt, but he looks normal otherwise. Nothing like what Paul looked like at the end of tape 6. Our next patient is Samuel B. Washington, which given the image used for Samuel here, I have to wonder if it's a nod to the actual Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel's malformations are unfortunately much worse than anything Thomas has. Samuel seems to have scars everywhere on his face. His eyes are red, some of his teeth are elongated and sharper, and his jaw, well, I mean, to be honest, it reminds me of when a snake unhinges its jaw to swallow huge prey. He is somehow communicative, but suffers from a constant state of paranoia and delusions. This is noted to oftentimes lead to violent outbursts. The treatment method they used for Thomas, heavy sedation, doesn't seem to be effective for Samuel. In fact, his recommended treatment is a high dose of xylazine. For those curious, xylazine is a drug that is commonly mixed with more illicit substances, like Fent, for example. It's also been linked to the increasing number of overdoses, and this is due to it being a powerful central nervous system depressant that is used on animals. Samuel's condition must be pretty dire if they're resorting to animal tranquilizers to sedate the guy. It also says that he's not to be communicated with unless it's through the intercom or when he's strapped down. The next patient is Ramon C. Herrera, and his malformations are, yeah, pretty horrifying. Ramon is our first uncommunicative patient. In fact, he's described as appearing to be in a catatonic state. I say appearing because the next paragraph immediately says that the patient is prone to sitting upright very suddenly and without provocation will projectile vomit at any staff member. And for those in healthcare, that may be a frequent experience, but I bet you've never had a patient, and for your sake I hope you never will, whose vomit is not only corrosive, but emits nerve gas. Yeah, how's that for a Friday night in the ER? If you thought the bargain Samuel L. Jackson getting animal tranquilizer as a treatment was insane, wait until you learn that even that doesn't work on Ramon here. In fact, all treatments are ineffective. Not much else is known about Ramon though, because any studies have to be done with the staff in full anti-corrosive gear and air purifying respirators, which I imagine isn't cost effective when they need to keep hiring new excavation teams because their employees keep turning into monsters. Our next patient is Charles T. Fleming, and he seems to be one of the unlucky crew members who got it the worst, because dude's totally covered in blood, his eyes look like they're bulging or just straight up gone, and his teeth are horribly proportioned, extremely long, and very sharp. He is, as you can imagine, uncommunicative. He is also the first patient we see with a blatant warning on his profile, which, as his profile states, is due to him attacking staff on site. In addition to being immune to pain, Charles also now displays cannibalistic tendencies. As you can imagine, treatments don't work on him either, which has led researchers to recommend immediate euthanasia, which sounds like a pretty solid idea for poor Charles here. Scott M. Oakhurst is our next patient and is communicative, but he has a caveat. Any communication with Scott needs to be done with caution, and this is where a second warning comes in. Scott has been described as pretending to be benevolent and friendly, but this is all a ruse due to his strong homicidal and cannibalistic tendencies. He also appears to be fast when taking out staff members, as he was found to have partially consumed 6 staff members on April 6th, laughing hysterically during the attack. Due to this and all other treatments being ineffective, it's recommended that he undergo permanent restraint for further studying or immediate euthanasia. And all I have to say about that is, why not just do both? The next profile shows Edward P. Kowalski, and this dude got it rough. I mean, he kind of looks like he's rotting from the inside out. His jaw seems to be falling apart, his eye sockets seem to be sloughing and super red, and his teeth all seem to be just made up of incisors of varying sizes. Not only is he uncommunicative, but he's also hazardous. Edward seems to have an inhuman power of suggestion and influence over others, and because of that, it's recommended that no one interact with him. As you can imagine, all treatments are ineffective, and he's also being recommended for immediate euthanasia. Our very last patient is John S. Rafferty, and take a good look at John. Really soak it in. Notice how he looks like he would definitely be in the military today. Now, look at what the mountain did to him. Brother turned into a husk. He looks emaciated. His eyes are pitch black and all of his teeth are gone. John is described as hazardous because he appears to be deceased. He has no vital signs, but his body isn't decomposing. Additionally, staff have become very ill after spending even a brief amount of time in the patient's room, even if they wore protective suiting. For those unlucky to be exposed to John, they require immediate quarantine. There also doesn't seem to be a way to treat the victims, as the reported mortality rate post-exposure is 92%. Even if you're lucky enough to survive, you're absolutely not getting away unscathed, because those who do end up surviving experience rapid mental and physical malformations. All treatments are ineffective on John, and he is also recommended to undergo immediate remote euthanasia. The tape immediately cuts back to Arnold's log, where he very poignantly says that he feels very lucky to not be in that condition right now, and I agree. He was only there for about a day at the most, and even almost 2 weeks later, he's still experiencing side effects from being exposed to the mountain. Arnold then says that he found it odd how quick Frank Porter was to accept his second rejection, mentioning that he said, "Good luck on your future endeavors," and immediately hung up before Arnold could even respond. Arnold mentions how he thinks he made the right choice, because he heard that something awful happened up on Mount Greylock, and that at the same time, all of these other horrible things were happening surrounding the mountain, like the bodies falling from the sky in Cheshire, something which we haven't seen yet, by the way. The home invasions in Berkshire and other surrounding counties, the pregnancy phenomenon, and other unexplainable things. Arnold deduces that all of these events must be connected to the mountain, which was confirmed for us during the ultrasound tape, and mentions that he has been trying to figure it all out. So he ended up reaching out to a local investigator who's also trying to find out what's going on, and told him everything he knew. However, Arnold mentions that he felt like he was being watched. Arnold elaborates, saying that he feels a looming threat that he can't quite explain, even wondering aloud if the government would really send someone to go and take care of Arnold, since he's now a loose end.
And remember, kids, the next time that somebody tells you the government wouldn't do that, oh yes they would.
Normally, he would have chalked it up to paranoia and explained it off as him losing his mind, but he mentioned that the other day, when he came back from the grocery store, he found that his front door was open despite him knowing that he had locked it before he left. Arnold then did a thorough sweep of his house, looking for any trace of anything his mysterious intruder may have left behind, even going so far as to replace all of the light bulbs in the house. Arnold then says that after saying all of this aloud, it makes him realize just how crazy he's been sounding. He's a rational man and notes that there's an explanation for everything. Sighing and leaning back into his chair, he says that he's glad he's gotten all of this on recording, and perhaps that's all he needed to snap him out of it. I'm also very glad that Arnold had the sense to get everything onto his log, especially because of what happens next.
Honestly, I feel much better just talking about it. This can't be. Oh my god, that's my basement door. No. Camcorder. Oh, where's the damn camcorder? Here it is. Thank God.
They're here. I'm inside my bedroom closet. I'm going to keep the tape recorder running, and I'm hiding in here with my files. If something happens to me, and you find any tapes or files somehow, please bring it to the investigator, Jim Malcolm of North Adams. That goes for this video footage as well.
Come on out, it's the police.
What?
So the thought form ended up finding Arnold hiding in his closet, and this is our second encounter of the cracked mask thought form. The first time we saw this entity was during the very last hunting trail cam in tape 6. We also got a quick look of an entity with a white and cracked mask at the end of tape 4, but we didn't actually get to see the creature itself until later on at the end of tape 6. Both instances of us seeing this thought form are during events where people are being directly impacted by the mountain. Those same events where people end up turning into monstrosities, sometimes with otherworldly abilities. Or if they're unlucky, like our unnamed basement dweller and Arnold here, they get their houses broke into and torn apart, I guess. This second encounter gives us a lot more information about the creature itself and what or who it seems to target. We hear it mimic birds, children, and even police officers as it hurriedly shambles around Arnold's house, no doubt in an attempt to lure it out. I feel like it's willing to attack anyone, but it's probably also able to be controlled or goaded into attacking someone specific. Even if that's not the case for this thought form, I think it may be the case for the other thought form that we see further on in the series. I don't blame Arnold for audibly panicking at hearing something huge shambling towards you with horrific attempts at mimicking human speech, but it didn't even know that Arnold was back in his house, which made me think about this interaction and what Arnold mentioned earlier in his log about coming back to his house to see his front door open. Could it be possible that this creature had already come once before to look for him, and if it did, then did it use the same tactics that it used here to try and lure him out? Remember, the only reason it found Arnold was because he started to audibly panic in the closet, and then it tried to use its police voice to lure him out, which was, in my opinion, another example of great comedic timing in horror, before busting open the closet doors and ripping Arnold apart. Which, why wouldn't Arnold just leave if he was that worried about him being a loose end in this whole thing? I know he was determined to investigate everything and get everything to Jim, but surely you can just go to like the other side of Massachusetts to at least be safe? Or does the mountain subconsciously force people to stay within the area? The reason I believe that the mountain, or whatever force was unleashed from the mountain, is able to subconsciously brainwash people is because of what we learned in both tape 6 and this current tape, tape 8. In tape 6, we learned from Paul's voicemail to Frank that the tunnels were somehow cleared, and lighting was strung up seemingly overnight. He asked Frank if he had hired another crew to come and specifically clear out and light the tunnels. But in Arnold's log, we learned that Paul himself was the one who cleared the tunnels and strung up the lights. So why doesn't Paul remember any of this then? Moreover, why doesn't he feel the aftermath of how much work that was for one person the day after? Was he in fact brainwashed? If whatever happened inside that mountain was enough to turn tons of people into monsters, cause deformities to appear in otherwise healthy individuals, and cause pregnancies to randomly appear and disappear, then who's to say that it can't also make someone clear out tunnels and string up lights without remembering? We also know that the longer you stay near and or inside the mountain, the stronger of a hold it has over you. Arnold and the photographer spent the least amount of time at and inside the mountain, and yet we learned that the photographer basically had to be carried back to his car, and Arnold is still having auditory hallucinations and paranoia up to almost 2 weeks later. Arnold himself mentioned that he's not a religious man, and yet he felt an extremely powerful and compelling force within that mountain. Which begs the question, just what the hell did Morelli's excavation crew unknowingly release, and why is it causing all these weird events in the county surrounding the mountain? Did SimioDyn and the US Army anticipate this happening at all? Our 9th tape opens up with someone accessing the GBS radio broadcast files. If you remember from the beginning of tape 8, the broadcasting network was also referred to as GBS, and we get further confirmation of this during the portion where Alan is yelling at his poor producers, as Alan's title happens to be GBS Executive. So, whoever is accessing these files is attempting to do so by breaking into their archives. The system notes that the specific information being accessed is the GBS property's 101 WRAV FM radio station broadcast from December 13th, 1963. More specifically, our hacker is trying to access the segment announcing the National Access Initiative. And yes, it hasn't gone over my head that the date of this broadcast is December 13th. If we had a 13th month, I'm sure the date would be 13/13/1963. That's how important the number 13 is to this series, apparently. The broadcast immediately opens up talking about President Lyndon B. Johnson's first activities after his succession of the presidency following Kennedy's assassination, specifically mentioning Johnson's administration's announcement of an upcoming program that will revolutionize communication and bring critical home electronics into every American household. This is thanks to the efforts of the newly introduced National Access Initiative, whose goal is to ensure that all citizens have equal access to vital communication tools and ways to stay informed, fostering connectivity, security, and unity all across the nation. What this means is that every eligible American household will receive packages containing various electronic devices, such as telephones, televisions, and radios, which, if this were done in any other story, well, except maybe Vito Carnes, it would actually be something to celebrate. In fact, it's something that should be done now, but I digress. My point is that I wouldn't be so quick to hail this as a good thing, especially given the context of the rest of the video, but of course I'm getting ahead of myself. These packages don't just contain electronics. They also contain a variety of things that aim to keep families safe, like smoke alarms, burglar alarms, and even flashlights. The broadcast then goes on to say that all of these items are meant to empower individuals to not only stay involved in their communities, but to also remain ready in the event of an emergency. President Johnson even provided a quote saying, "In this era of progress and innovation, it is crucial for every American to have the tools necessary as they navigate the challenges of modern life in a time of ever-increasing technological dependence." These electronics packages are being made available to American households through a partnership with world-renowned technology manufacturer SimioDyn USA, which, no, thank you. Not with what we know about their activities being done some 20 years in the future from the time that this broadcast took place. After the quote, we see the video glitch for a second, and it shows a newspaper article titled, "President Kennedy says no to SimioDyn USA," and then another one titled, "Assassin Kills Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson Sworn In." And the subtitle even mentions how the assassination was pinned on a Marxist. If you go back to that first article snippet though, you can just barely make out what the text says. From what I can tell, Kennedy's rejection of the National Access Initiative from SimioDyn left many Americans perplexed, and there's even a mention of him citing his reason for rejecting SimioDyn's partnership offer. But it's very difficult to make out. What I can deduce, however, is that Kennedy was skeptical about the true nature of the collaboration with SimioDyn, and if I read this correctly, seemed to be intending to tell people about what the true nature of their collaboration offer is for. This, of course, would lead to Kennedy's assassination and Johnson swearing in. Which, given the context of the broadcast we're listening to, it seems like President Johnson was significantly more willing to sign this deal with SimioDyn USA, which seems to be the starting point of SimioDyn USA's and the government's relationship, opening the doors for Project Stargate down the line and the implied findings that led to SimioDyn USA setting up Unit 13 in Mount Greylock. We then cut to footage of the inside of someone's house 3 years into the future, July of 1966. It seems the television or some other appliance is recording a living room at nighttime. My guess is 9 p.m., but I can't really tell if that's a 21 or not. but given the mountain time zone, it seems to be in a city within any of these states in this thin stretch right here. So we know that 3 years after this broadcast, people haven't caught on to the fact that it seems these electronics provided to them by the government are actually spying on them. We cut back to the broadcast where it starts glazing SimioDyn USA's technological revolutions over the past few decades, which gives us an even better idea of how long this company has been around. Up to this tape, our latest point in the story is January 2nd, 1993, where SimioDyn has sufficiently integrated themselves within the government and their affairs, going so far as to partner with the US Army in conducting these weird Thoughtform manifestation experiments. Just think about that for a second. They went from being a company who revolutionized technology and partnered with the government to supposedly help, aka spy, on Americans, to now working in tangent with the US Army doing experiments using what I assume is now refined information from decades of unethical spying and horrific events that ended up killing and mutating people, as well as stealing their pregnancies. All in the span of, well, who knows how many decades at this point, but it's more than 30 years, I can tell you that much. We're then told from the broadcast that SimioDyn's feats have made them a household name. The broadcast then goes on to say that the electronics provided will be of the highest quality due to SimioDyn's involvement with the initiative. We then cut to another clip of a different living room somewhere along the west coast of the country, as evidenced by the timestamp showing the Pacific time zone abbreviation. This time, the date reads November 19th, 1966. Same year, but it's 4 months after the first clip that we saw. We don't have much time to process this as another clip cuts in. This time, it's of someone in their bed. This clip was taken during 1967, though the month and date is too obscure to read. One thing to note about this particular clip is that the person who is in bed doesn't seem to be sleeping. In fact, they seem wide awake and almost like they're cowering in fear, staring at some unknown horror. A part of me wonders if what this person is staring at is actually whatever this weird looking thing is to the left of the video. The broadcast once again begins to play, describing the initiative's goal of providing the highest quality technology as a means to enhance the enjoyment and benefits of Americans who will benefit from this program. It then mentions that the president of SimioDyn USA, Percival C. Rothwell, was asked for a quote, and apparently he had a lot to say. The broadcast then shows a picture of Percival, and honestly, if there was ever any guy who looked like a demon in disguise, it's Percival. I mean, the dude's eyes look black from the way the photo is edited, and what kind of a name is Percival anyway? Sorry, Ready Player One fans, I didn't mean the Percival slander. He's cool. He's cool. Percival begins by saying that the National Access Initiative represents a milestone in the nation's journey towards progress and inclusivity. Boy, if only Percival knew how long that would last. Get it? Because it's a joke on the current geopolitical state of the world. Percival then continues by saying that it's a reflection of the US government and SimioDyn USA's unwavering commitment in empowering every American citizen, regardless of age, location, or income, with the tools needed to thrive in the new electronic era. And again, if this were any other story or any other circumstance, I'd be applauding a company finally putting their money where their mouth is and helping the people of the country. But this is Greylock, and I'm just saying my stomach doesn't feel too happy at the thought of their unwavering commitment. The broadcast is interrupted again by another clip. This time it shows the inside of someone's kitchen. The year is 1967 with the month and date indiscernible, and we can see from the timestamp that this clip was taken from a random house somewhere in the central time zone. Are you seeing the pattern here? The clip here hangs on longer than the other clips we've seen, and that's because we can hear a speech in the background, which I've gone ahead and subtitled for you here. I also raised the volume so you can actually hear it better too.
Through the miracle of modern communication, the words we speak, the actions we take will be read, heard, and seen on the instant, and judged in every city and village in America. They are the silent delegates. We cannot see them or hear them, but they are present.
We return to Percival stating that 32% of American households still don't have a television in their home, meaning that they're less informed and unable to quickly or efficiently respond in the event of an emergency. He then goes on to say that a much greater percentage of households don't even have smoke alarms to warn them in the event of a fire. But that doesn't seem to be the thing that shocks him the most for some reason, as he then goes on to state that the most shocking thing of all is that 29% of Americans don't even have a phone, rendering them unable to call for aid or even contact their friends and family. The broadcast is, again, interrupted by another clip of what appears to be a male figure sitting in the living room. The date here seems to be August of 1967, and we've once again crossed back to the Pacific coast as seen here in the timestamp. But the most unsettling thing about this is the figure then turns their head and seems to be looking directly at whatever appliance is surveilling them. After this, we cut back to Percival's statement. He states that for decades, and at any given time, people have wondered just what exactly SimioDyn USA has been working on, and for decades they have kept it all quite secretive, but that he's gonna let us in on a little something. Before the statement continues, the image of Percival distorts and we can hear him talking again. This time, he sounds noticeably different, like whatever mask he had on for the public isn't who he really is, which, yeah, duh. But this snippet here seems to be taken directly after Kennedy rejected SimioDyn USA's proposal. It seems someone had told Percival that Kennedy was amenable, wondering if it was true or if it was just more of their bullshit. At this point, I'm wondering if the person Percival is talking to is actually Lyndon B. Johnson, since not only was he Kennedy's VP at the time, but he would have been the perfect person to bribe with the promise of obtaining the presidency if they were to help bring their goals to fruition. Before we get to that point, we hear Percival angrily shout that Kennedy aims to expose the entire plan and reason for the National Access Initiative, and that their meeting couldn't have gone any worse. Percival then calls Kennedy an ethnic slur, and yes, I'm being serious, and it's also the way that I found out that John F. Kennedy was of Irish descent. Rob and their team really did their research for this one. Percival says that if Kennedy thinks he's going to expose SimioDyn, he's got another thing coming. Percival realizes that they're not the only ones pissed off at Kennedy, as he had recently also rejected Operation Northwoods, a proposal for false flag operations in which terrorist attacks would be staged against the US military and the citizens in order to falsely place the blame on Fidel Castro's government so that the US would have an excuse to invade Cuba. Which, given the series' track record of referencing real-life events, yeah, you can bet your sweet butt that this was also a real thing that happened. Though, whether that influenced Kennedy's real-life assassination is still not directly confirmed, but like, I could see it. Percival also references Kennedy issuing Executive Order 11110, which delegated certain functions of the Treasury Department concerning paper currency to the Secretary of the Treasury. This delegation granted the Secretary the power to print and coin silver certificates, which were a type of paper money backed by silver. The intent behind the order was to provide the President with more tools to help manage the nation's currency, support economic policy, and the flexibility to print silver-backed currency in the event the Federal Reserve notes were low. There were, of course, some misconceptions surrounding this EO, and these were that the EO was repealed due to concerns about it being a secret order to abolish the US dollar to create a new currency, and that it's a new order. In reality, this EO was an amendment of Executive Order 10289 passed in 1951 by President Truman, and simply gave authority for the Treasury to print new money under very specific circumstances and only with the consent of the President. Percival should really look closely into what it is that he's mad about, but then again, I'm willing to bet that he didn't actually care too much about Kennedy issuing the EO or rejecting Operation Northwoods. No, what really pissed him off was having his National Access Initiative rejected and threatened to be exposed. Kind of a fumble by Kennedy here, to be honest, because he played his card way too early and it ended up costing him dearly. Regardless, Percival uses these reasons as a sign that there are snakes in the grass.
And then that executive order involving the Federal Reserve, there are a lot of snakes in the grass. And it's about time that Kennedy got bit.
The broadcast returns back to Percival's statement, where he says that SimioDyn USA is building the future, and as the great-great-grandson of the company's founder and current president, he'll say one irrefutable fact.
The most important one. All roads lead to connectivity. Without connectivity, we have no future. The more isolated individuals are from one another, the weaker they are, the more easily defeated they are, and the less likely they are to see the value of their own lives.
You get the gist at this point. The broadcast is rife with the interruptions of clips showing the insides of people's houses. Well, this happens again.
Hey, hon, have you seen the car keys?
With the timestamp reading March 20th, 1968 at 11:18 Central Time. Percival once again comes through and says this.
Humanity has stood many times at the precipice of extinction, and the only reason we are still here today is because we stood there together. SimioDyn USA is here with you every step of the way.
If you didn't catch it, here's what flashed by as the crowd began to clap. This time, it's a red figure with a much smoother looking mask. It's definitely not our white masked thought form, but it could be the other figure we saw flash by during the emergency broadcast, though I can't say for certain. Regardless, this figure is put in place of Percival for a quick second before the broadcast returns to normal, with Percival saying that SimioDyn is there with the people every step of the way. Of course, we know this to not be true, but it seems like it took quite a while for some people of the public to catch on, as our next clip was taken during October of 1990 at 5:47 p.m. Mountain Time, and on it, it shows a wall with some writing which says, "The NAI program was a trap. They are watching. They're listening. Fuck LBJ. Fuck SimioDyn. I won't be your lab rat anymore." Percival continues and says that whether it's from a lack of infrastructure or a lack of income, no one should be restricted access to potentially life-saving and enhancing technology. He finishes his speech by stating that these plans and promises will ensure that every American citizen can truly be equal in our society through security, connectivity, and accessibility.
It is our belief that it is these three factors that make America the best country in the world.
Another clip cuts in, this time a few years further into the future, on September 13th, 1993 at 1:22 a.m. Eastern Time. There's a few things to note here, mainly the figure we see here. It looks more like a shadow of a person than anything else. Not only that, but a second later, the figure itself seems to lose tangibility as it now looks more like TV static than a solid shadow. Another thing to note here is that this is the first instance of the Eastern time zone, which of course is the time zone where Massachusetts is in. And it's the first instance of a thought form that we see here in all of these clips that have been cutting the broadcast off. Not only is this also farther ahead in the future, but it's actually now the furthest point in the timeline that we have. Remember, the tape made for Alex Marsh is dated January 2nd, 1993. And this is 8 months and 11 days later, implying that it didn't take long for the Thoughtform manifestor experiments to produce tangible results, and you're going to want to keep this in mind for later. So our shadow body is flickering in and out of existence, and just behind him, we see the closet doors begin to slowly open, until they're all the way open, and the broadcast then cuts back in with a jump scare from the applause, which I can only imagine is the ghost of Percival being fed up with being interrupted. As the applause continues, we see what appears to be a gathering of what I can only really describe as a cult. More than likely, these are the cult members that worship whatever entity resides within Mount Greylock and the Thoughtforms. It seems like there's 16 cult members gathered at the mountain itself, no doubt within the forest that likely isn't too far away from where Paul's excavation team was set up.
But a few of the guys said they'd seen something running around in the woods surrounding the site. I figured it's probably a deer or whatever, but seeing all the ruckus we're making out here, you know? But they all insisted it was something else. Something like a real tall man.
Another thing to note here is that the trees are barren. meaning this photo was likely taken during winter. Finally, their masks look very similar to the Thoughtform with the white and cracked mask that we saw on the final hunting cam clip and during the final moments of Arnold's log. Only their masks seem intact, which makes me wonder why the Thoughtform's mask is cracked. Maybe it has to do with a prior injury, or maybe it's tied to the stability of the Thoughtform itself. Like, maybe since it seems to be a powerful Thoughtform, it needs a significant amount of people in order to become tangible? It's tough to say, honestly. We're then taken back to the initial radio broadcast where we're told that households won't be the only recipients of these packages.
Mr. Rothwell also stated that these monumental benefits won't only be made available to American households, but to police and fire departments, schools, and to small businesses as well. The Johnson administration has stated that while they are going to begin launching this landmark program right away, it will first be made available only in select areas as construction crews from coast to coast prepare to establish important infrastructure that will support the National Access Initiative program.
To me, I think this ties directly into the excavation and construction at Mount Greylock, as SimioDyn and the US Army turn it into Unit 13's base of operations and site of experimentation. This is further supported by the next interaction. This next clip, taken from what seems like a TV set in a little girl's room, is time-stamped at December 29, 1994 at 3:09 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, note how this is the second clip from the Eastern Time Zone, and it's also the second instance of an encounter in the early hours of the morning. Though, there's that whole thing with 3 a.m. being the time where the barrier between the physical and spiritual world is at its thinnest, which does tie into the overall thematic elements of spirituality and weird eldritch beings, so that's pretty cool. This clip is now the furthest point of the timeline that we know of so far. Though I imagine that tape 1 is technically the furthest because of the footage we see, but I'll get into that after we talk about the tapes. Anyway, we hear some brief static and oh my god, what the hell is that? I can't decide whether it looks like Papyrus or Gaster from Undertale, but what I do know is that it looks horrifying. So this thing pops up and tries to call out to Katie with an extremely haunting voice. Just before Katie calls out to the voice, we see the figure become intangible once again. It seems like trying to call out to Katie expended whatever remaining energy it had that allowed it to maintain a corporeal form. But as we see here, it seems like Katie directly responding to it, and at the very least acknowledging it, allowed it to call out to her again.
Hello? Hello? Is somebody there? Am I class?
Katie,
Where are you?
I'm over here, Katie.
Oh, there you are.
Katie then continues to talk to the creature, and we hear it call itself her imaginary friend.
Who are you?
I'm your imaginary friend.
My imaginary friend? But I didn't imagine you.
You must have, because here I am. You probably just don't remember.
Are you from that weird doctor's office place that I had to go to?
I think you might be right, Katie.
It's after this portion of them interacting, however, that I realized that it hadn't expended the energy needed to be corporeal. It was just hiding itself. Katie then says that she can't find her glasses, so she can't see her imaginary friend, which at this point I think it's safe to call this thing a Thoughtform. The Thoughtform says that her glasses are over near where it is, and she wonders aloud why they're near the Thoughtform, to which it replies,
I noticed they were a little dirty, so I wanted to clean them for you. Yes, they look all shiny and new now. Here, come get them.
Where are they? I still can't really see because my eyes are so bad.
You reach out and I'll put them into your hand. Okay?
Okay.
Closer. Just a little bit closer.
Looks like Katie's imaginary friend wasn't so friendly at all, unfortunately. The static we see as Katie is getting attacked seems to be obscuring something, as I can just barely make out a figure sliding towards the right of the video. This is then cut off by a quick flash of this image, which appears to be someone sitting in the Thoughtform manifester and actively having it used on them. After these images, we're then met with the aftermath of the attack with a bloodied camera and silence. The radio broadcast comes back for the final time and ends by saying that the Johnson administration projects the nationwide release as happening sometime between mid-1966 and 1967. And given the timestamps we see from the clips that interjected the video, I'd say it was pretty accurate, if not a few months early, as it looks like March is the earliest point we see from 1966. Our final surveillance clip is timestamped May 18th, 1987 at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you're definitely going to want to keep this whole clip in mind because it comes back in a big way. Here we see an answering machine and there's a ringing phone next to it. It goes unanswered and we hear this.
Hello, you've reached Alex Marsh and Tiffany Crisaldi. We're not able to get to the phone, so please leave a message after the tone and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
So, this was one hell of a tape, huh? It revealed a lot about SimioDyn, the political climate, and of course the Thoughtforms. So let's start with SimioDyn and the relationship they have with the government, and how that ties into the political climate itself. We know from Percival that he is the great-great-grandson of the original founder of SimioDyn, and that the company has been revolutionizing technology for the past few decades, so much so that they've become a household name. They're like our Samsung for things like phones and TVs and washers and dryers. We also know that SimioDyn and the government were working on their findings from Project Stargate since at least the mid-80s, having Paul's crew excavate and clear out the tunnels leading into the mountain. We also know that the experiments from Unit 13 were having tangible results, as we see Katie getting directly maimed by one that she seemingly imagined herself. It's not like SimioDyn had an easy time establishing all of this either, as we know that Percival faced pushback from President Kennedy, who even threatened to expose everything about the National Access Initiative and the true nature behind it. But when you really think about it, they had such an easy time getting rid of him, because Percival notes that they weren't the only ones who were pissed off by Kennedy's unwillingness to cooperate. That begs the question then, how and why do they have the ability to do such things? I mean, the obvious answer is money and influence, but think about where that influence comes from. Remember the photo of the 16 cult members that flashed on screen during an applause segment? We know that there's something in Mount Greylock, some powerful entity that Arnold said various cultures worshipped. The night excavation crew even mentioned that they saw people in the forest watching them, and among them, a taller being that looked like a man wearing a mask, which we know is the Thoughtform with the cracked mask. So, how likely is it that the cult we saw flash by during Percival's speech is actually made up of members of the US government and SimioDyn, and were the same people who the night crew saw during their excavation? It makes sense by the time the mid-80s roll around, as they both have equal vested interest in the mountain and whatever resides within it, as well as the capability to seemingly send Thoughtforms to clean up SimioDyn and the government's loose ends, like we saw with Arnold. We also know that by the mid-90s, Thoughtforms are just kind of popping up and attacking people who imagined them. But this also tells us that the Thoughtform experiments have been going underway, and it seems like it's open for both adult and child participants. The first tape explaining the Thoughtforms even tells us that they may appear frightening, like something out of a child's nightmare, but that they're allegedly harmless and easy to contain. But if that were true, then why are there Thoughtforms running around and attacking people? Hopefully these questions are answered within the next few tapes. This tape opens in a similar fashion to tape 4, only instead of someone poking around the outside of someone else's house, it's someone poking around in a forest. The person holding the camera wanders around for a few minutes until they come upon a rat.
Oh shit! A rat! There's a rat! There's a motherfucking rat!
As the figure is holding the rat up to the camera, we cut to the clip that tape 9 ended on with Alex Marsh and Tiffany Crisaldi's answering machine and the phone, only to hear it ringing. The phone goes unanswered, and then we hear this.
Hey, babe. I'm just checking in. Could you please give me a call as soon as you can? Don't worry about work either, please. You're way more important, okay? Okay. I love you. Bye.
The video then cuts to a still taken from a security camera in an interrogation room. Here we see an investigator and a censored Alex Marsh, explaining the events that led up to what ended up happening to Tiffany.
After we lost the baby, I stayed home for almost a month. We both took it hard, but I was just really worried about Tiffany. She seemed to only be getting worse with time. She spent a lot of time by herself. When it came time for me to return to work, we decided I would call home every day during my lunch break, just so we could talk and check in on each other. She always picked up the phone whenever I called. She knew it would worry me sick if she didn't pick up the phone. But this time, on that day, she didn't pick up.
As Alex breaks down in tears, the video cuts back to another voicemail he left for Tiffany, around 36 minutes later. He mentioned how he hoped she was doing okay and that she was probably just busy doing something, but that he's worried because they've been talking on the phone every day since he went back to work. After Alex ends the message, the voice cuts to this.
I'm getting a bit worried, so please call me back, okay? Love you.
It looks to be a sort of prayer circle lined with candles around and within the symbol itself. And if you look closely just before the clip switches back to the answering machine, you'll see that it matches the same symbol seen throughout the series during the radio broadcast from tape 9 and the TV broadcasts seen in tapes 4 and 7. However, this circle here all but confirms that the nature of SimioDyn is not a typical corporation, but it's in fact a front for a cult. A cult that worships whatever the hell is inside of that mountain and the thought forms that result from it. The video cuts back to the phone and answering machine, this time taken at 1:13 p.m. Alex, now audibly distressed, tells Tiffany that he's on his way back home because he's not sure what's going on, but he's freaking out.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm gonna head home. I'm sorry, I'm kind of freaking out. I'll be there soon. I love you.
The next cut takes us to a screen recording of the Massachusetts office of the Chief Medical Examiner. We see here that Dr. Heinrich Albert, a medical examiner from Westfield, is making an audio log at May 19th, 1987 at 3:23 p.m. This is dated the day after Tiffany died, and we then learn that this is the intake report for Tiffany Crisaldi. Her case file then pops up on screen, and we can see that her date of birth was May 26, 1958, and the recorded date she died was May 18, 1987. As the doctor begins to describe Tiffany's profile, we see that he struggles to determine what age she was when she died.
Caucasian female, age 28, 39, 26, 30, 27, 25.
While the year from her date of birth doesn't change, it seems like the doctor himself noticed what just happened, as he clears his throat and continues to read her report, albeit audibly confused for a second. We then hear from the audio log that this autopsy will be conducted at the request of the Adams Police Department, and as this is mentioned, the video once again glitches.
This autopsy will be conducted at the request of the Adams Police Department.
In the captions, we see that Revelations 9:6 is now written over and over again. This is a reference to a Bible verse which reads, "And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them." Which is interesting when you remember that the monument located at the peak of Mount Greylock directly mentions that we are shaped by the memories of those who remember us, and the tie-in to how thought forms are brought into existence. Could this be implying that Tiffany was sacrificed and then forced into existence as a thought form? This only lasts for a second, as the video then returns to normal and the doctor begins to discuss the initial external evaluation. The first thing he notes is that there is a resinous black substance that seems to be adhered to the face, neck, and upper thoracic region, which is in this area of the body. He mentions that he took samples, but as I imagine, the results for those haven't come in yet. He moves on to the other observations he made, such as her eyes being fully retracted into her skull, something that we similarly saw with Dawn Wright, and something else that we'll see again in another tape. He makes the suggestion that these findings aren't consistent with any other suggestions that violence or a struggle was the cause of her death. But we saw the ritual circle and the candles, so then did she do that? Was she overcome with so much grief over losing her pregnancy that she tried to get it back? Or was she brainwashed into going along with whatever ritual was laid out for her? We know that pregnancies didn't just disappear, but they also appeared in people randomly. Could she have heard about that and tried to bring Max back? It's not clear, but it'd be heartbreaking if she did this to herself in a misguided attempt to bring back Max. We also get some pictures of Tiffany herself as the doctor is going over the initial external findings. And we also learn that rigor and livor mortis aligned with the predicted time of death. Really quick, because I know this gets misconstrued by a lot of people, but let's go over the stages of death for a second. So immediately after you die, all of the functions in your body ceases, obviously. So your heart stops beating, your lungs stop breathing, and your brain stops working. Shortly after this, about 15 minutes later, the body undergoes pallor mortis. This is more easily seen in more fair-skinned people like me. It's the first stage of death, and because it happens so quickly, it's not really useful in determining time of death if it's already been a few hours since the person initially died. The second stage of death is livor mortis, which is one of the findings the medical examiner noted on Tiffany. This stage of death occurs 20 to 30 minutes after death, but isn't plainly visible until about 2 hours after death. It's characterized by the blood pooling on the lower sections of the body, causing a discoloration that looks like bruising. Forensic analysts use this and its fixation progress as a good indicator for how long the body has been dead. This is because blood flows easier in warm environments than it does in cold environments, and when you die, your body of course cools down, which leads me into the third stage of death, algor mortis. Algor mortis is the third stage of death and is characterized by the cooling of the body. The rate at which a body cools after death depends, of course, on the environment the body is in, as well as a variety of other factors. But typically, the body will lose about 1 degree to 1.5 degrees in Celsius, or 1.5 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit per hour. This makes determining the time of death within the first 12 to 24 hours much easier to predict. Rigor mortis is the fourth stage of decomposition and involves the muscle stiffening due to a biochemical process that results from the depletion of ATP, the energy molecule required for muscle relaxation. When the remaining ATP is used up and no longer available after death, the muscle fibers remain locked in a contracted state. This is why the body initially goes limp after death but stiffens up as the hours pass by. Now, these aren't all of the stages of death. There's like 4 more after this, but those involve the actual like bloating, putrefaction, and liquefaction of the body and its tissues and organs. And thankfully for all of us, Tiffany is not at that stage yet. Though, I wonder if the weird black resinous substance is at all tied to the liquefaction process that happens inside the body, or if that's purely from just whatever the hell happened to her. So after the doctor notes the decomposition progress of Tiffany's body, he mentions that a particular finding and the reason for this report is due to this symbol that he found carved onto Tiffany's abdomen, specifically right below the sternum. The most confounding part of this is the lack of hemorrhaging around the symbol itself, suggesting that this was carved into her just a few hours after her death. The doctor also notes that he wants to consult with symbologists and forensic anthropologists to better determine the nature and significance of the symbol carved into Tiffany. You should also keep this symbol in mind because it's gonna come back later. The doctor ends his report by stating that while the exact cause of death is yet to be determined, the carving was the thing that required an immediate and in-depth investigation into her death. Not the black resinous substance coming from her face. No, it was the symbol. He even notes that this aspect of the case should be treated with the utmost priority due to the unusual and unnerving nature of it all. The doctor is audibly uncomfortable in that last sentence when referring to the nature of the symbol, and before we have time to share the sentiment, the video cuts to an older recording taken during a visit between a doctor with their name redacted and a young Tiffany Crisaldi. The doctor mentions that Tiffany just had her 6th birthday, and after prompting more one-word responses from her, he notes that she's awfully quiet during their visit.
Did you have a party?
Yeah,
How was it?
good.
That's good. You're awfully quiet today. Are you seeing them again?
Yes,
Can you see them right now?
yes.
Where are they? Where are they, Tiffany?
They're everywhere.
So it seems like Tiffany was going to this doctor because she was seeing things. More specifically, it sounded like she was seeing people, or things that look like people, you know? She also notes that they're everywhere, and it seems to truly scare her. The video then cuts again, and we're met with the medical examiner making a private log talking about Tiffany's case file for his home archives. It's the same day, March 19th, but it's 8:03 p.m. The doctor notes that Tiffany's body arrived shortly before he was going to leave the office for the day, but he decided to at least start the external examinations. He notes that misfortune seemed to be looming over the proceedings.
Though it seems misfortune loomed over the proceedings. Electrical flickers and inexplicable drops and spikes in room temperature. Repairs may be required. I wanted to refrain from mentioning this part whatsoever, but I feel compelled to do so. After placing Miss Crisaldi in storage and moving on to cleaning up, my assistant Sarah mentioned that she'd heard what sounded like a woman crying, coming from the direction of the cooler.
These phenomena aren't just visible to the medical examiner, but his assistant also heard what sounded like crying coming from the direction of the cooler they had just placed Tiffany's body into. Not wanting to tell his assistant that he heard it too, he sent her home early and told her that she was likely just stressed or overtired.
I didn't dare to tell her that I heard it as well.
The video then cuts again, and we're taken back to the old recording of Tiffany and her doctor, who asks her if she's ready and nervous. Tiffany says she's both ready and nervous, but nonetheless agrees to follow the directions the doctor lays out for her. This next section is a bit long, and I recommend that you go to the video itself if you want to do this visualization exercise, but we'll be going over the key points of the exercise here. So the doctor begins by playing some sounds that will help her through this exercise, and immediately turns on the most haunting and unnerving ambient music that I've ever heard.
I'm going to play some sounds that will help you through this exercise.
Like, I'm sorry, good? According to who? Anyway, he instructs Tiffany to close her eyes and keep them closed, and to try and visualize doing what the doctor begins to describe. He tells her to picture herself standing outside of her house in the front yard, that it's a beautiful day with big fluffy clouds in the sky, no one else is around, and to look at how each blade of grass gently moves with the breeze. He tells her to do the same with the trees that surround her house.
Look around and see the trees around your yard. Watch how the breeze affects the leaves as it passes through. Make the wind blow a little harder, enough so the branches are swaying a little bit. You can hear all the rustling of the leaves around you. Wind calms down now.
He describes the wind calming down as she begins to walk towards her house. With every step she takes, the day seems to be getting later and later, until she's right in front of her door at nighttime. He tells her to open the door and to picture her house as it always looks during the night, with the only difference being that she is the only one there now. She is then told to take off her shoes, to feel the floor against her feet, and smell the familiar aroma of her house.
You can smell the familiar aroma of your house. Everything is in its proper place. You are alone. You're going to walk quietly to your bedroom now. You come to the stairs and begin to walk up. You hold on to the banister as you go, letting your hand slide up. Step. Step. Step.
As she makes her way to her bedroom door, she's once again reminded that everything is in its proper place, but that she is alone, and no one else is there with her. Every step brings her closer to her bedroom door, and she's told to picture how it usually looks, with the pink flower stickers that she stuck on it 2 years prior, and the small wooden sign that reads Tiffany with the little blue bird in the corner, which, by this point, I'm starting to wonder why. This weird psychologist is extremely familiar with the layout of her house and the way her bedroom and the door to it looks. She opens the door to her bedroom and is told to picture everything exactly how it was the last time she saw it. The colorful quilt on her bed, the small white dresser with all the stickers and scuff marks, and all of her stuffed animals resting by her purple toy box. But as she walks in, the doctor mentions that she sees something that's never been there before, and asks her what it is she sees, to which she replies,
Tell me what you see.
It's a door next to my window.
That's right, it's a door. What does the door look like, Tiffany?
It looks black. It has weird marks on it. The wood looks weird.
As she describes the unsettling appearance of this out-of-place door, the doctor tells her to open it, but Tiffany says she's scared. Now, a normal psychologist would be like, yeah, okay then, that was great, we can stop here today. But this is obviously not a normal psychologist. He tells her that it doesn't matter if she's scared, she must open the door.
Doesn't matter if you're scared. You must open the door. Good job, Tiffany.
Something I wanted to note here. The moment Tiffany opens the door, not only does the music we were hearing stop, but the video also seems to significantly glitch out for a few seconds. I want to say that this ties directly into the phenomena behind the Thoughtforms, as we learned from the orientation tape that these Thoughtform creatures are known for interacting through things like electronics. This would not just tie into the instance of the medical examiner noting the electrical flickering and the temperature spikes, but also the consistent glitching we see in the videos featuring Tiffany, which includes the glitching seen during her ultrasound. I have a thought as to why this is, but let's finish this visualization exercise from hell first. Tiffany describes this room and the presence that lurks within, much to the doctor's insistence that she is in fact alone.
Now tell me what's on the other side of the door.
It's a small room. Somebody's in there.
No, Tiffany, you're alone.
No. There's someone here. He's facing away from me. He's standing and tall. He's very tall.
Tiffany, you are alone. Nobody else is there. Now tell me what else is in the room.
There's a TV. The screen is all fuzzy, and the tall man is watching it.
Tiffany, I want you to focus on removing the man from your mind.
The doctor then tries to essentially force Tiffany to erase the man from her mind, but when he snaps his fingers, something unexpected happens.
When I snap my fingers, he will be gone. You will be alone.
The man's shaking. His body is cracking.
Okay, Tiffany, I'm going to count down from 5. When I snap my fingers, you will return to the real world. 5. You're feeling more awake
He's
now.
turning around.
4. Everything around you is becoming hazy.
He's looking at me. He sees me.
3. Tiffany, you can feel the chair you're sitting in again. 2. Everything around you fades to the blackness behind your eyes. 1. Full control of your body. 0. You're awake, Tiffany. You will return to reality now.
The recording cuts off as the psychologist hurriedly tries to wake Tiffany up, and we can see that trying to rid the man from her mind didn't work. In fact, it seemed like the man got really mad. It turned to look at her and slowly approached her. She also didn't know who this man was, but it seemed like whatever power this man carries is enough to affect the real world, as we hear the room the psychologist and Tiffany are in begin to shake. Not only that, but the video here glitches too while all of this is happening. It seems like this last part is littered with images, and while I saw a quick couple flashes of Tiffany, I can't tell if any other images were hidden here. I wouldn't be surprised if the picture of the cult was in there. Anyway, the video cuts back to our mysterious hiker who found the rat at the beginning of the video. He opens up the rat and finds a mini cassette tape. After he hits play, we not only see the same star symbol that was carved onto Tiffany's abdomen after her death, but the audio log begins with a greeting to Mr. Melgren, the same name of the private investigator that Arnold sent his findings to, as well as the man quoted from one of the articles that flashed by in a prior tape. But why are they the ones reaching out to Jim Melgren? Doesn't the appearance of that star and torch symbol connect directly to the one that was carved onto Tiffany? It wouldn't make sense that they'd be the ones to not only ritualistically sacrifice Tiffany, but also then reach out to the investigator who has been trying to find them. But I think that there's 2 possibilities as to why this could be. One, either this is similar to the Vita Carnis situation where an employee from the Living Meat Research Institute was sending tapes to someone investigating the Carnis species, or whoever or whatever is behind the star and torch symbol is actually attempting to fight back against SimioDyn and the US government. And the symbol that was carved onto Tiffany was done in order to, I don't know, protect her soul or something. Regardless, we now seemingly have 2 shadow organizations that may be fighting an unknown battle with each other, and people are just now starting to get caught in the middle of it. The voice behind the tape even mentions this, saying that Jim Melgren must be wondering who this person is, how they found him, and why they're contacting him.
Mr. Melgren, I have some very important information for you pertaining to the events you have been investigating. You must have questions regarding who I am, how I located you, and what reason I am contacting you. I won't be answering any of those questions. The law will be clear in due time. For now, I am simply offering you information. You can take it or leave it.
The voice notes how impressive it is that Jim has managed to remain alive for this long, and ends the audio log with the mention that they're going to tell Jim a story.
It's impressive you remained alive for this long. But then again, you've gone to great lengths in the past tenere testimony, and with you, I'm going to tell you a story, Jim. A story that you've been dying to hear.
The video then cuts to the cold storage, time-stamped around 45 minutes after we heard Tiffany crying from within her storage locker. Nothing happens for a few seconds until the locker door starts to rattle and shake, and then... The video ends with Tiffany and her distorted face flashing in and out, which can also be seen in the section with the medical examiner beginning his audio log of the external investigation done for her body. This tape was crazy, and it seems like the information here only brings more questions about Tiffany and whatever it was these psychologists were cultivating when she was a child. And speaking of questions, I have a lot. Like, what in the hell is going on with her? Why does she seemingly have such abundant and strong psychic energy to affect electronics in a way similar to Thoughtforms? Why were doctors trying to get her to open the black door and erase the man from her head? Is that man the weird Thoughtform with the white cracked mask? And if it is that experience what made its face crack like that? Why was she then ritualistically killed after Max was taken from her? Why is there such an issue and inconsistency with her age? And probably most pressing, is she a Thoughtform herself now? I feel like Tiffany and the Thoughtforms have to be connected on some deeper level, but we don't really have an answer to it as of now. This tape opens up on a broadcast schedule screen, with the next program being listed as Inside These Walls, starting at 3 a.m. This episode is titled Basement Renovation, a home renovation project that brings a new spirit to an old basement. It seems to be yet another instance of basements being referenced in the narrative. And I wouldn't point this out, except it seems like there seems to be some kind of connection involving the Thoughtforms and basements.
I feel much better just talking about it. This can't be. Oh my god, that's the basement door. No.
The episode opens with someone looking at an old door, and as they peer inside, we see that it's a cramped looking room. The door then shuts, and we can see some screen tearing, and it looks like something is moving across the screen. A couple seconds go by, and as the person barricades the door, the moving image clears up a bit, to which we see it's the exact same image that appeared in the last tape, the one of the ritual circle and the candles. Whoever this person is raises the barricade and then steps into the room, where the video glitches and we see that room now decorated with the same ritual circle and the candles. It also looks like there's streaks of blood or some other substance on the walls behind the candles that wasn't there before, and I think something moves in front of the camera and to the left. After this, the video goes back to our mystery camera person closing the door, this time while they're in the room. As they descend a bit further into the room and look back at the door, the video cuts to a tape player being set on the ground and being plugged in. Our mysterious person plays the tape, and we can hear what sounds like Alex crying before the video glitches out again, with the footage of the ritual circle once again passing by on top of the footage. This tape was very short, and thank goodness for that, but I believe it implies that whatever happened to Tiffany was definitely done by someone else. I'm not sure exactly who could have done it yet or why, but it seems likely that Tiffany was ritualistically sacrificed in that basement, as we saw the same ritual site in both this tape and the last one. It also seems like Alex's crying was used as some sort of lure or anchor for Tiffany specifically. I can't really see any other reason as to why Alex's crying was specifically used here, other than the note that Thoughtforms strive off of strong emotional energy, and her and Alex were absolutely feeling strong emotions after Max was taken from them. But I do think this next and final tape for now at least, will give us an idea of the methods used by SimioDyn, the Army, and the doctors that worked with them. This is the longest tape in the series so far, and if you think back to like 10 tapes ago or so, you'll remember that the ending of the orientation tape intended for Alex Marsh said that the next tape in the series would be titled Waking Your Subconscious.
However, there are several required mind exercises as a part of this video system that must be completed prior to your scheduled date in order to prime your consciousness and ensure the highest quality results. Please enter the video cassette labeled TF2, Waking Your Subconscious, now.
But instead of the tape being addressed to Alex Marsh like you'd expect, it's actually addressed to someone named Charlotte Jean Melgren. And the manufacture date is also listed as January 2nd, 1993, the same date as the tape for Alex Marsh. This one also features the same warning screen about not watching this tape if you're not the sole recipient, but there's a new screen now that follows this one, and it's titled Health Warning. According to this screen, participation in the TF system, and I assume TF stands for Thoughtform, may result in the viewer achieving a heightened sensory state, which can cause the viewer to experience unexpected visual and auditory occurrences which have no discernible source. But doesn't that sound familiar? A heightened sensory state which can cause unexpected visual and auditory occurrences which have no discernible source? It seems to me that this is warning the user about a potential thought form creation just from watching and participating in this part of the system. After all, if thought forms are created from strong emotional states, then surely that's what this tape is referencing to, right? This thought process is further supported by the listed possible outcomes, which apparently is not the complete list, but those occurrences are listed as transient moving shapes, unsettling shadow formations, vocal phenomena such as whispering, unidentifiable music that sounds distant or muffled, and a feeling of a separate presence even if you're alone. It then says that a more comprehensive list with additional information is available in the health and safety section of the handbook. Boy, what I wouldn't give to be able to see inside that handbook. But my point is that it does seem like these occurrences are possible instances of thought form manifestation without the use of the machine. It makes me wonder then if the people who were selected to participate in this experiment had a stronger ability to manifest thought forms or had a higher sensitivity in sensing and hearing them. Maybe that was the point of the therapy sessions that Tiffany had when she was a child, because she had the ability to see thought forms. Quite a lot of them, apparently. The next screen displays the program equipment that the participant will need, which includes the TF System NeuroVisor headset, which could be a mini version of the manifester that was created to aid in priming the participant's mind, as well as the workbook and a writing utensil. The tape opens up with the title, Welcome to Waking Your Subconscious, and if you slow down the section right here, where it glitches right away, you can barely see a figure that you'll want to keep in mind for later. We get a creepy robotic voice welcoming us to the second video program in the Preconditional Protocols and Orientation video system for Unit 13.
Greetings, and welcome to the second video program in the Preconditional Protocols and Orientation video system for Unit 13, TF2, Waking Your Subconscious. This video cassette has been specially designed to utilize powerful psychological exercises, along with cutting-edge technology and your own brain's neuroplasticity, to allow Unit 13 to access the deepest energy potential of your incredible mind.
Me? My incredible mind? The tape then mentions that this is required to increase the likelihood of prime form cognogenesis. But before we get into the actual meat of the tape, let's talk about neuroplasticity and just what the hell cognogenesis even is. Neuroplasticity is defined as the brain's ability to change its structure and function throughout life by forming new neural connections and modifying existing ones in response to learning, experience, and injury. This ability allows us to learn new skills, adapt to new situations, and even recover lost functions after a brain injury, which in all honesty is incredible how complex the brain is, and why the idea of hijacking someone's brain in psychology to create manifestations of people specifically is terrifying to me. It really feels like SimioDyn and the Army have no idea what they're actually getting themselves into. Cognogenesis, on the other hand, isn't really a widely recognized or used term, but what I did find when I researched it is that it does relate to something very interesting. damn it, he fucking moved the page up. This paper is described as tracing the evolution of consciousness through a continuum of recursive processes spanning reaction, temporogenesis, symbiogenesis, and cognogenesis. They go on to state that by integrating biological cooperation, temporal structuring, and self-referential processing, their model provides a novel perspective on how complexity emerges and scales across evolutionary time, which is interesting when the entire theme of this analog horror series is essentially creating people by thinking and feeling really, really hard. Skipping through the listed processes a bit, we can see that cognogenesis is stated to represent the culmination of these recursive processes, where self-awareness and intentionality arise through iterative feedback loops. Essentially, it's the end result of the prior processes of reaction, temporogenesis, and symbiogenesis, all coming together to allow self-awareness and intention to behaviors and actions. So what this tape seems to do is essentially get your mind primed to undergo these prior processes in manifesting a thought form. But I guess some people are sensitive or skilled enough to manifest something during the priming stage, which results in those unexpected occurrences. We then move on to the checklist to ensure that all of the conditions have been met before proceeding with the program, with the ominous addition that any deviations from the required conditions will precipitate undesired results. The first requirement is to ensure that you're alone and will not be disturbed for the entire duration of the program.
Ensure that you are alone and will not be disturbed for the entire duration of this program. It's critical that you do not become distracted, as working with the brain in such a way is a very delicate process.
Next, you're supposed to turn off all light sources, except for the television or monitor used for this program. It's even suggested that you initiate this program after the sun goes down. So, I guess the thought forms just don't like the sun. Maybe they'd be less cranky if they had a bit more vitamin D, I'm just saying. The reason for this complete darkness is that not only can it help the participant focus, but it can also result in them feeling vulnerable or frightened, which is apparently beneficial to the program achieving the desired results. Third, you need to make sure that your volume is loud enough to block out any outside or ambient noise. Again, referencing the aid in focusing and in producing those feelings of fright and vulnerability. But this time, the tape elaborates.
This too helps with focus, but it also aids in those feelings of fear and vulnerability, which are where our deepest and most complex selves are rooted.
Keep this statement specifically in mind for later. Fourth, you're to open your workbook to the TF2 section and have your writing utensil ready. Alternatively, you can use a piece of paper labeled with your name and TF2 at the top if you don't have a workbook. This step is so you can hand all of your work into the program liaison, who will then transfer all the data from there.
Once all of these conditions have been met, you're ready to continue to the next part. Now is the time to make sure that your neurovisor headset is correctly equipped and connected. If you need any assistance, or are looking for more information regarding the neurovisor, be sure to check the section titled Equipment and Connection in your Unit 13 Program Handbook. This will be your final opportunity to pause playback for the rest of this tape.
Apparently there's more information found about the helmet itself in the Equipment and Connections section of the handbook, which again, I'd love to get my hands on. But we get a final mention of ensuring that no distractions will occur in probably one of the most unsettling ways possible.
Pausing after this point will cause a disruption, which could interrupt the data being collected by your headset. Your screen is about to gradually turn red. Once it is completely red, the program has officially begun, and the point of no return has been crossed. You have 10 seconds.
The countdown ends, beginning the program, and we're then taken to a title screen with section 1 at the top. If you look in the background, you can see that figure that briefly showed up in the very beginning of the tape, and, if I'm correct, you can kind of see it as the screen is turning red, though it seems like the figure is very far away and only slightly discernible. Here, however, you can see that it definitely got closer. As the first section titled Induction begins, we see that the subtitle reads, Unlocking the Gateways to the Deeper Corridors of Your Psyche. Okay, House of Leaves, I see you, I see you. A photosensitivity warning comes up on the screen stating that this section contains flashing and flickering lights that may be harmful to those who are photosensitive, and that if the participant suffers from any kind of photosensitivity disorder, to just close their eyes and only listen to the following section. Which is so funny to me because, like, if you're meant to be in a pitch black room with the equivalent of a VR headset on and a bright ass monitor that is flashing red, then how the hell are you supposed to block that light all the way aside from smashing your palms into your eyes? The induction phase begins and tells the participant to stare at the screen for 30 seconds as a red light rapidly flashes. Now, I actually sat here and looked frame by frame of those 30 seconds just to see if there was anything hidden in the flashing, and well, there wasn't. So I literally just scrolled through alternating red and black screens for like 2 minutes just to see if there were any clues. You can't say that I'm not dedicated to finding answers. Anyway, the flashing ends, marking the end of the induction phase. Section 2 then comes up on screen, and we can see that our mysterious friend with the long fingies is now closer than they were before. We also see that this section is for priming, with the subtitle reading, "Preparing your mind for enhanced neuroplastic realignment." Can you imagine saying something prepared your mind for enhanced neuroplastic realignment the same way you'd say that, like, I don't know, seeing a Dexter fan cam fundamentally altered your brain chemistry? It feels like the same energy to me. The next exercise is titled Outlier and will show 5 sets of words, with each set being made up of 6 words. For each set of words, you'll have 10 seconds to choose and write down the one word out of the 6 that you feel doesn't fit with the others. In other words, you're looking for the outlier, hence the name of this section. The first set presents us with chair, table, couch, rope, bed, and mirror. The outlier here, of course, is the rope. Also, if you haven't noticed by now, that creature is sliding closer just ever so slowly. Set 2 appears on screen and lists brain, heart, blood, lung, liver, and kidney. The outlier here would be blood, since blood isn't an organ. Set 3 appears on screen, but the tape then glitches and we see the words "All you cherish will be remade," a photo of a woman posing with 2 dogs, and a newspaper article titled "Local Samaritan Opens Her Heart and Home to Stray Dogs," which talks about Charlotte Melgren opening a new dog shelter and adoption center that focuses on rescuing, rehabilitating, and rehoming stray dogs. Charlotte is described as a longtime dog lover and advocate for animal welfare, and is stated to have been inspired to start this shelter and adoption center after noticing the increasing number of stray dogs in the community. She's listed as saying, "I've been so deeply changed by the dogs I've cared for, and I want them to have the chance to do that for others." A few things to note here. This is the same Charlotte Melgren that is listed as the recipient of this tape, and is actually Jim Melgren's daughter. So this must be what the mysterious voice was talking about to Jim at the end of tape 10, that story that Jim had been dying to hear. I also want you to keep that quote from her in mind because it comes back in a really, really fucked up way. So this is your early warning if you're squeamish about hurt animals and blood and stuff. I'll be sure to give a timestamp to skip the part you really might not want to see once we get closer to the section itself. But for now, let's get back to the tape. Set 3 of the words appear, and they're listed as terrified, screaming, running, followed, hiding, and visible. This one's a bit trickier, but I'm gonna assume it's either hiding or visible. After the set disappears, the screen suddenly turns red and the audio distorts. We then see the words "love contorts her flesh and bone" before the tape returns to normal and the 4th set of words appears on screen. This time we see the words mutilated, disfigured, mangled, butchered, dismembered, and improved, with the obvious outlier here being improved. This is getting kind of unnerving. Can we please go back to like household objects or something, please? Set 5 appears with the words morph, transform, mutate, turn, and then we get direct confirmation that Charlotte is indeed Jim's daughter, and from the words in this and the last couple of sets, it seems like something happened to her, and yeah, something happened to her, alright. So the rest of the words appear on the screen once the tape returns to normal. which are change and then you. As the countdown ends, we see the figure has now gotten much closer to the point where you can just barely make out its eyes. The countdown ends and the screen changes to read and state priming complete. Suddenly, we get a clip of what looks like someone inside of a cave, and on the top left, we can see DIA recovered footage. More specifically, this is footage recovered from the Greylock project. It's listed as a tunnel exploration, with Paul as the camera operator. The camera was listed as recovered on April 8th, 1987, while the date on the camera from this specific clip seems to be corrupted, and only shows what looks like an infinity symbol and the year 1987, which to me almost looks like 1997 because of the glitching. We only get a couple steps worth of footage before a warning screen pops up, stating that unauthorized tampering with the contents of the tape has been detected, and instructs the user to stop the playback and return the tape to the program liaison. Failure to do so may result in undesired consequences and could even compromise your psychological well-being, stating that compliance is mandatory. This is accompanied by a horrific screeching noise that I did not play here because, like, oh well, you already experienced it once. Maybe. Did you watch this video before watching Greylock? Section 3 comes on the screen, and this one is titled Conditioning, testing the ways that you perceive and respond to certain stimuli. Our long fingy guy is still creeping up to the screen, ever so slowly, but the background is now a blood red, and the ambient sound from the tape has become discordant and louder. The next exercise is described as a specialized form of the Stroop test, which is a test that is done to measure multiple facets of the user's recognition to congruent and incongruent stimuli, while also examining how you deal with high stress, high anxiety situations. So, the Stroop test is meant to measure what is known as obviously the Stroop effect, which is defined as the delay in reaction time between neutral and incongruent stimuli. Naming the font color of a word is a slower and more difficult task when the color and the word don't match versus matching. So if I took the word green but changed the font to yellow and ask you to tell me what color the word is written in, it's going to take a second for the brain to push past that automatic inclination to say green rather than yellow. We're shown a screen that displays examples of congruent stimuli with instructions stating that the user is to say only the facial expression on each face from top to bottom. The next screen shows examples of incongruent stimuli with the same instructions from before. Now that we have an idea of what this test might look like here, the tape states that the first testing phase of the section is about to begin. It's apparently the easiest phase, obviously, with each subsequent phase becoming more and more difficult. The user is then instructed to look directly at the screen and state the answers out loud. This section is pretty interesting on its own, and the visuals were absolutely crazy. I genuinely forgot how crazy this series looks when it comes to body horror, and boy oh boy am I reminded of that once again in this tape. The tape cuts to outside security footage from a company called EverVigil Security Monitoring. We see that this is a live feed, and the date is August 23rd, 1992, with the timestamp reading 11:44 p.m. We can also see that the security system here is armed. After a few seconds, the feed glitches out severely. A few frames later, we see that figure then appear and walk towards the door of the kennels. This is a tall-ass thought form, man. Why does every scary thing have to be like 1 trillion feet tall? The feed switches to a porch view, and we can now see this horrific creature in more detail. Does this guy look familiar to you? Not only does it look like the figure that's been creeping closer and closer to the user during this tape, but it also kind of looks like that thought form that absolutely obliterated Katie in December of 1994. This encounter we're seeing now, however, would have taken place almost 2 entire years earlier. So, could it be that the thought form Katie allegedly manifested has been going around and taking people out before it finally reached her? And if so, why? Or if this isn't the same thought form, then who manifested it? And why does it look so similar to the one that attacked Katie? The feed then switches to the overall view of the kennels, and we can see that whatever it was that went inside triggered the alarm, turned on the lights, and freaked out the dogs. In the lower left corner of the camera, we can see that there's a power outage now in the second unit, which is the kennels. The video cuts to a desktop recording of an employee working at EverVigil security monitoring. A few seconds pass by and a pop-up notifying the employee about the security alert appears, prompting the employee to re-enter their credentials to manage the alert. Here we get the name T. Erickson, and we get more specific information about the location of the kennels. We see that Charlotte lives at 28 Flint Road in North Adams. If you remember from tape 8, Arnold mentions the events happening around the mountain, and one of those were the home invasions. The home invasions, which we saw an emergency warning broadcast for in tape 4. And North Adams is listed as one of the towns placed under this warning.
Attacks appear to be random, spanning across the towns of North Adams.
So this is an interesting connection to that event, because maybe this implies that the break-ins have been happening for years at this point, and thus the need for things like security monitoring has increased. Which I'm sure SimioDyn will have some kind of a hand in providing the good citizens of Massachusetts with the technology they need to be prepared in the event of an emergency. God, I fucking hate Percy. Anyway, Erickson calls Charlotte, and while it takes a couple of rings, she does eventually pick up, still sounding very exhausted because she had just been abruptly woken up in the middle of the night. It's also here that we learn the first name of the employee, which is Troy. Troy from High School Musical? Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hello, this is Troy with EverVigil Security. Am I speaking with Charlotte Melgren?
Yes. What happened this time?
The line, "what happened this time," is interesting enough on its own, as it does seem like my initial thought of the break-ins having happening for years may be correct. But we also learned that she's not the one who got the security system for her house. It was actually her dad, Jim Melgren, our investigator.
Our system alerted us that kennel door 1 was open and then closed unexpectedly, followed by a power outage. Is it correct that your primary residence is the first unit at Forever Friends?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not the one who got the security system. It was my dad. So I don't know if there's some way to fix this or whatever, but you guys have called me in the middle of the night like 5 times in the past couple of weeks, and it's all turned out to be false alarms. Every time.
Troy apologizes for what Charlotte's been experiencing and offers to take a look into why she's been getting so many false alarms over the past few weeks, but first needs to confirm that Charlotte is safe.
First, I need to be sure that you're in a safe situation. Are you currently alone?
Yeah, it's just me. But I'm looking out the window right now, and everything seems fine. I mean, the power's out, but it literally goes out all the time over there, so I'm just gonna go flip the breaker.
Troy again tries to convince Charlotte to not go over to the kennels. He instead offers to have a police officer dispatched to check the area and make sure it's safe before she went over there, something I really wish she would have just done. But lackluster policing fails again as Charlotte pleads with Troy to find an alternative option, as she has to be up early in the morning, and the last time they were dispatched, it took them over an hour just to come and for it all to be nothing. Troy starts to object, but Charlotte interrupts and says that the power goes out all the time over there, and the dogs aren't even barking. If someone was really over there, they'd be letting her know for sure. And boy oh boy, does Charlotte sleep like a rock because those dogs were barking. Troy pulls out the "ma'am, I could get in a lot of trouble" card as a last resort to get Charlotte to just stay in her house, but she once again attempts to negotiate with him.
How about this? I'll keep you on the phone while I go, okay? I'll switch to my cordless and everything. If anything happens at all, you can call the police.
Miss Milgren.
I will even grab my flashlight. Please. I have a lot going on tomorrow, and I really just want to get back to sleep.
Just let me at least check tonight's footage to make sure everything looks okay first, all right?
Yeah, of course.
We see a menu pop up for a camera archive under Charlotte's file. Here, we see that she had incidents on August 9th, 10th, 13th, 16th, 18th, and finally, the 23rd, the night this call is taking place. He attempts to view the footage from earlier that night, but gets a playback error. After attempting to open the footage a few more times, he tells Charlotte what's going on, and she immediately suggests just popping over to the kennels really quick.
Okay, I'm getting an error. It's not letting me review it.
Well, I can just head over really quick. Like, real quick.
Well, there's no motion alert in tonight's logs, so... Okay, just please be quick and safe.
Thank you. Seriously, I'm gonna go throw some clothes on and, grab the cordless, okay?
Yeah, alright.
As she does this, Troy mentions he's going to take a look at the previous alerts to try and figure out what may be going on. He starts with August 9th, the door alarm, and as he opens the file, we see footage of the secondary view of the kennel porch and the door swinging open and then slamming shut, all on its own. The footage from August 10th's window alarm is unfortunately corrupted and cannot be viewed. August 13th's door alarm runs into a similar problem, but instead of showing the file corrupted screen right away, it shows a black screen for a few seconds before having that file corrupted as well, almost like the file was corrupted as the system was loading the playback. We then hear Charlotte come back on her cordless phone as Troy opens the footage from the August 16th motion alarm. Troy confirms that he's still there with her. If you look closely at the roof of the kennels in the footage, you can see a huge, slinking silhouette casually stand up and walk towards the rear of the building. Troy doesn't seem to notice this, I don't know how, as he doesn't mention it to Charlotte, who had just informed him that she's now outside and going across to the kennels. The next motion alert from August 18th opens on the front porch view, and we immediately see our horrific stalker up close and personal on camera. Troy is completely in shock as he says absolutely nothing to Charlotte, who, like I just mentioned, is making her way to the kennel. He replays the footage once again, probably to check whether or not he's hallucinating from sleep deprivation, and as this file is playing, we see it suddenly glitch out and a playback error appears on screen, which seems to support the idea that the footage from these alerts was being corrupted in real time to hide the thought form that's been skulking around her property. Also, another thing to mention about the thought form, since we get a much better view of it, is that it really does seem like the thought form that Katie supposedly imagined. Which makes me wonder, if it is the same thought form, then why was Unit 13 hiding it for a little over 2 years before it inexplicably went and attacked Katie? Were they genuinely trying to contain these things, but realized that they in fact cannot contain something that can become incorporeal? Did they feel that Katie had outlived her usefulness and they had to dispose of her because she saw too much? Or, even more horrifying, did something really terrible happen at SimioDyn between August of 1992 and December of 94, and now all of these thought forms that were allegedly all contained are now free? Is this why we see what looks like an abandoned lab in the very first tape of the series? Back to the tape. We hear Charlotte tell Troy that she's inside the kennels and that the power is definitely out. She then says that she's going to go and check on the dogs really quick.
Okay, I'm just gonna go check on the dogs real quick on my way to the basement. But everything seems fine.
I'm really not sure this is a good idea, Miss Milgren. Listen, something's wrong with the recordings I'm seeing of your home.
What do you mean,
There's another mention of a basement in the series, and honestly at this point I'm just assuming every basement in Greylock is like the equivalent of a portal to hell or something. I mean, we saw in the previous tape that whoever was in Tiffany and Alex's house was prepping an entire sacrificial chamber, complete with a hell circle and candles. And it just seems like every time someone or something breaks into someone's house, they always hide or come in through the basement. Which is such a weird detail when you realize that whatever force governs these things resides deep within a mountain. Unless the idea is that basements are usually made of like stone and concrete from within the earth. And with the whole clip of how our moon came to be that played earlier in the series, the closer you are to earth and the stone itself, the more potent the energy connection is. I don't know, that'd be crazy if even one thing that I said from that was like on the right track. Troy, confused and concerned, points out that he's not sure how the previous people who called Charlotte didn't notice any of these issues with her recordings.
The previous calls you've been getting, they weren't false alarms. Yeah, again, I'm not sure what's going on here, but something's been stalking around your property for a while now.
Charlotte asks Troy what the thing stalking her is, if it's an animal or something. He says he doesn't know and begs her to just go back to her house. Finally, convinces Charlotte to leave.
What, an animal or?
No, well, I don't know actually. Listen, I just think you should go back to your house, okay? Please.
Okay, yeah, you win. Let me just make sure that the dogs are okay, and I'll head back over. They're just right here.
Honestly, he should have just led with that before she got all the way to the kennels, but I digress. Look, all I'm saying is that if I were there, the situation would have been different, okay? I don't know, man. This is such a long video. I'm actually losing my mind. Charlotte is about to leave, but stops to check on the dogs really quick since they're nearby. Troy says that while she does that, he's going to review the footage from earlier that night to see if it's decided to work. And then...
Hi, babies. Hi, Mama.
What's wrong?
I don't know. You okay, buddy?
Charlotte? What's going on?
The dogs aren't moving. They're all just standing here.
Well, it's late, so maybe they're just tired or something. But let's just get you back.
That's not it. They're just standing here, not moving. Like, at all. Like, not even their eyes. It's like... Oh my God. It's like they're fucking dead, but they're not.
What the fuck?
What?
Miss Melgren, you need to get out of there and return to your house immediately. I'm sending your information to the police right now.
What's going on?
Get the hell out of the kennel, now!
Fuck, I'm leaving!
What was that? Are you okay? Charlotte!
So, Charlotte's really in the shit now. She checked on her dogs only to find them in some weird catatonic-like state where their eyes weren't even moving. Troy finally yells at her to leave the kennels because something is in there, and the Thoughtform ambushes her and steals her flashlight away as she's running out of the kennels, rendering her unable to see. She's understandably terrified now and pleading with Troy to help her. Luckily, the officer en route, Sergeant G. Wilkers, is only 3 minutes away. But in a situation like this, that might as well be the same as 3 hours. Charlotte hears the Thoughtform make an ungodly noise and yells. Troy tries to calm her down and tells her that she needs to find a way out of the kennels. Charlotte says she's trying, and to her horror says this.
The door's fucking gone. The door's fucking gone.
Charlotte, you're gonna be okay. Just listen to me right now. Feel along the wall until you get to a door or a window, okay? Do it right now, nice and quick, alright?
I think the door is fucking gone and that is not a fucking person are two of my favorite lines ever said from horror series on YouTube. Just so confusing, and the implications are just equally as terrifying. Also, they just kind of carry the same energy. As Charlotte tries to feel along the wall for a window or door, we see Troy access the live feed of the kennels only to discover that Charlotte was right. The door is, in fact, fucking gone. So clearly the kennels have turned into the corridor from House of Leaves, as Charlotte says she can't find any windows or doors, and it feels like it just keeps on going. As she continues to silently panic, she once again hears the Thoughtform making noise, almost like it's taunting her since she can't see. And if you listen closely to this part, it almost sounds like high-pitched dog barking.
You need to keep feeling for a way out, Charlotte. Don't let anything distract you. good, Charlotte. You're doing great. I need you to tell me what room you're in so I can inform the officer. Okay. Are you able to see now, even just a little?
Yeah, I can't see anything. No, it makes no sense. Nothing is making sense. I have no clue where I am. It's so dark. I can't tell if it's really this dark or if I'm blind.
Charlotte.
Troy tries to get her to calm down once again and reassures her that if it's really that dark, then whatever is in there more likely can't see her either, so it's important to try and remain as quiet as possible until the police arrive. He then says that the officer is just down the road and that he's going to stop talking so that they can focus on staying quiet. He also says that he's not going anywhere until he knows she's safe. Charlotte thanks him and then continues to cry and apologize to Troy for not listening to him in the first place. Troy says that it's alright and that she's going to get out of there, but no more talking. As he's saying this, we hear a noise that sounds like heavy breathing with a loud thump and dragging sound, then what sounds like a door opening. The noise becomes much louder and we hear horrific groaning and growling gets significantly closer. We then hear what sounds like a dog smelling something before one of the creepiest lines in analog horror is uttered.
I think my skin is moving.
We hear what sounds like Charlotte getting dragged away while Troy calls out for her, but all he can do is just listen to her scream. The tape abruptly switches back to the priming tape, and this time there's a true or false section. This section is described as an important test comprised of 5 statements. The user is to check true or false beside the corresponding number for each statement in the workbook. Some things to note here: the background screen has now switched to black, and the figure of the thought form is basically right in front of the screen and moving closer at a noticeably faster pace while the statements are being read. Statement 1 reads that the video system is physically changing your brain, which is true. It goes on to describe how the video system leverages the principles of neuroplasticity through specific audiovisual stimuli and cognitive exercises. This influences specific neural pathways in your brain, thereby physically altering the structure and function of your brain in response to this experiment. Statement 2 says that there's only a very small percentage of people who will never betray their moral values, no matter the situation. The answer here is false. The video goes on to describe that under the right circumstances, like intense peer pressure, survival situations, or psychological manipulation, it's proven that anyone can be made to betray even the strongest attachments to their beliefs, which is an interesting thing to include here, and makes me wonder if this means someone is going to be forced to betray their morals in a drastic situation. What the situation could be, I'm not sure as of now. Statement 3 says that through your conscious mind, you make your own decisions. Now, this one might shock a good number of you, and it's because this statement is also false. The video mentions that a large portion of human decision-making occurs at an unconscious level. The conscious mind then... Can this thing back the fuck up? Damn! The conscious mind rationalizes these decisions after the fact, making the person believe they made a deliberate choice, but choice is just an illusion. Statement 4 reads that we all have immoral thoughts and desires, but that it's critical to focus our energy on the positive aspects of ourselves so that we can be better people. This one is also false. And this is where it gets really interesting. The video explains that the darkest aspects of your mind are part of a larger psychological entity that resides deep within your unconscious. This shadow entity cannot be reasoned with, cannot be ignored, subdued, locked away, or eliminated. Even attempting any such thing has the opposite effect, only making it stronger, darker, and more dangerous. This seems like a reference to whatever figure the psychologist was trying to get Tiffany to ignore during her visualization exercises. Remember, he kept insisting that she was alone and nothing could hurt her. However, when Tiffany opens the black door in her room and goes inside, she sees a tall man. The psychologist even tried to forcefully banish the figure from her mind, but as she mentioned, the man was shaking and his body was cracking. He was also getting closer to her, and as this was all happening, the room itself seemed to be rumbling, almost like an earthquake. We also have had references to inner shadow figures in other tapes, but what exactly is it? Is it the main source of the thought forms? Is it a thought form that can infiltrate dreams a la Freddy Krueger? How does it connect to the entity within Mount Greylock and the thought form manifester itself and the cult? There's a lot of questions to be answered, as you can see, and I still think it'll be a while before we actually get any kind of substantial answers. Statement 5 says that opening the door to your shadow psyche and embracing your darkest urges as part of yourself is the only way to live a fulfilling life, which is apparently true. The video doesn't provide an explanation, however. It simply states this.
Testing complete.
Once the test is complete, the video moves on to section 5, which is titled Activation, Establishing the Subliminal Bridge. To establish the bridge, there is apparently an awakening sequence, which is described as an experience that has been carefully constructed in combination with previous exercises to create a connection point between the user's conscious and unconscious mind. It also states that this is the final section of the tape, and to ensure that you're watching and listening very closely, warning to not look away or shield your eyes for any reason. It then reminds the user that fear and vulnerability are essential components to this process, with a countdown to the activation of the subliminal bridge beginning. The countdown doesn't get a chance to finish, however, as the tape glitches on 3 and we get a brief flash of someone with most of their face missing, likely the thought form we've been seeing getting closer and closer to the screen. The tape then returns to a red screen for a few seconds before the most insane acid trip you've ever experienced begins to unfold in front of your very eyes. And among them, we can see a bloodied skull that appears before the tape returns to a red screen, and then cuts to what looks like the clip of Don Wright speaking, but his face is very distorted, only leaving white pinpricks where his eyes should be. The video cuts back to a red screen before a clip of what looks like a hiking trail during the day appears, and as it zooms into the forest, it returns to the red screen. The next clip is an accidental addition of Rob showering. I joke, of course, as it seems like someone started recording their bathroom door during their shower because they may have heard something. This seems to be the case as we see the door slowly open and slightly close, like whoever was peeking inside didn't want to get noticed by the camera person. The red screen appears again, and the next loud and funky looking visuals that appear show the Earth and other cosmic visuals from what seems to be the How Our Moon Came to Be clip, as well as Greylock Mountain. This next section has backwards audio, so I'm gonna leave it to editing me to show you what it's saying, if it's saying anything at all. After another weird visual of a face with incoherent speaking, we see what seems to be someone recording a thought form from their basement window. You can see it blink and slightly move, and it looks like it's tall and hunching over. As it zooms in, the red screen comes back before I get jump scared by a clip of someone's Minecraft playthrough where they're showing off their redstone railroad. No, but really, this clip is of someone riding in a minecart in what I presume to be Mount Greylock itself. We already got recovered camera footage from Paul Morelli's camera during the Greylock project, so who's to say we won't get minecart footage? Once this clip ends, we're then told that the activation sequence is complete. The video then cuts to what seems to be body cam footage of the responding officer who finally managed to reach the kennels. As expected, we see him open the door to the basement, where he mentions he can't find Charlotte and that the kennels are empty. The officer announces himself as he slowly descends into the basement, calling out to see if anyone is down there. As he reaches the bottom, he mentions that it's super dark, and we hear this.
The fuck was that?
Understandably unnerved by this, he begins to look around the basement. As he wanders around, he complains about the odor, which, oh my god, I can't even imagine, and I don't want to imagine. By the way, here's a timestamp you may want to skip to if you're squeamish. He looks around the basement a bit more, and luckily finds Charlotte. This is an insane visual, and probably one of the most brutal and disturbing states I've ever seen a character experience in any kind of horror media. Also probably one of the grossest. And according to Rob, I believe they called this mess of human and dog limbs and organs Dog Mom. I also want to say that I think this tape may have been intended as some sort of trap for Jim. While the tape was intended for Charlotte, it's clear that whoever tampered with the footage meant for those clips and visuals to specifically invoke a strong emotional reaction in Jim. And since the tape itself is described as establishing a subliminal bridge by watching it, I want to say that Jim has now established a bridge to whatever plane of existence these thought forms reside on, making them aware of his existence. Probably. The tape then ends, and we see that the next tape in the series is titled TF3, The Shadow, Communion and Assimilation, which I think is a reference to the shadow figure from the 5th statement in the video and the tall man / thought form that lived in Tiffany's head, something I'm very excited to learn more about. So, that's 12 tapes from Greylock. And hopefully I'll have uploaded this by the time Rob puts out tape 13, but if not, then keep in mind that I will be making a shorter video where I just talk about that tape separately. This series has a lot of layers. There's government infiltration and corruption, corporations having a hand in historic events just so that they could have their own way, weird supernatural and spiritual phenomena that is connected to a mountain, cults, and strange experiments involving unpredictable monsters that may or may not have been conducted in the most ethical way. Let's go over what we know, and I'll give you my final thoughts and predictions for the series going forward. We know that this story seems to have a narrative point that is tied to the event of a rogue planet smashing into Earth some couple billion years ago, with many pieces of that rogue planet not only coming together to form our moon, but also becoming a part of the Earth itself. This implies that Mount Greylock is one of those places, as many cultures from every part of the globe made the trek to Mount Greylock and left various artifacts and evidence of their worship and even sacrifices, both human and animal, made to the entity within the mountain. I believe that a cult eventually formed from centuries of this practice, and the cult leader seems to have been the main founder of SimioDyn USA, where his great-great-grandson Percy took over and is implied to be directly responsible for Kennedy getting assassinated, which allowed Lyndon B. Johnson to be the successor to the president and allow SimioDyn to enact their National Access Initiative. Decades pass, and we see that every home in the country now has these electronics, and unbeknownst to them, they're being monitored by SimioDyn and the US government through them. We also know that as this is happening, SimioDyn USA and the Army are working on something known as Project Greylock, an operation that led to the hiring of an external excavation company and the services of an expert in anthropology and archaeology. Though the excavation of the mountain led to the miners experiencing horrific mutations and psychological effects, some of them even ended up gaining supernatural abilities like an inhuman power of suggestion. And due to Arnold having sensitive information about a government project, SimioDyn and the Army weren't willing to risk having a loose end around, especially since it's knowledge that will fundamentally change history as we know it. The mountain being excavated also seems to be having unintended consequences for those who live around it too, like pregnancies randomly appearing and disappearing, the mutations I mentioned earlier, mass break-ins, and something that we haven't seen yet but was mentioned by Arnold, which is the dead bodies that were falling over Cheshire. Among this, the people who have been personally affected by these tragedies, like Tiffany, are hinted at having been a participant of these weird thought form manifestation experiments, mainly through the visualization exercise that the redacted doctor conducted on Tiffany when he told her to open the black door in her room and describe what she saw, only for her to see a thought form, seemingly staring at a TV playing static. I wonder if those who participate in these experiments, or really anything to do with Mount Greylock and the thought forms themselves, are doomed to end up being killed by a thought form or sacrificed in some weird ritual which seemingly turns people into thought forms. We know that Katie, the little girl who was attacked by the thought form, wonders if she manifested it from those weird doctor office visits that she had to go to. We also know that Tiffany was going to see a psychologist as early as 5 years old. since we know in the tape that she had just turned 6, and yet the doctor was very familiar with her and her house and her room for some reason. Something seen in long-term patient and doctor interactions. This psychologist would then guide her through those weird visualization experiments that I mentioned, and we also learned that Tiffany sees multiple thought forms, and they're everywhere. However, she seemingly ended up being sacrificed after her pregnancy was stolen. For what reason though, I don't know. And it seems like Alex Marsh ended up participating in these experiments, possibly as a way to bring Tiffany back as a thought form, not knowing she had already been sacrificed to become one, or so I think. Charlotte, on the other hand, seemed to have been maliciously targeted, but I'm not sure by who. I want to say that the mysterious person who left the tape for Jim Melgren is part of that cult we got a picture of. Perhaps their symbol is that star with the torch that we see carved into Tiffany's abdomen, and as the symbol shown during the radio playback of the cassette tape. Maybe this cult is the one who is able to turn people into thought forms, and they're taunting Jim because he's trying to uncover them and their activities. It would explain why Charlotte was targeted, as it would act as a sort of warning to Jim. It'd be one hell of a warning, though. Finally, I wanted to point out that it seems like something may have happened to SimioDyn later on in the series, as we're initially told that the thought forms are able to be contained. But we see by 1994 that the ones being manifested are running around and killing people. So could it be that something happened and now the thought forms aren't able to be contained? Or could it be what I mentioned earlier, that they thought these things could be contained, but it turns out that that's actually not the case? Regardless, this series is incredible so far, and I'm truly excited to see how else it develops from here. The connection between spirituality, religion, and cosmic horror is just so interesting, and using psychology as a supplementary narrative point to kind of tie it all together really does get bonus points from me because I absolutely love psychology. As for my predictions on what I think happens next, I want to say that we'll get to see Alex's results of his time in the thought form manifestation experiments. We'll finally get to see the dead bodies falling over Cheshire, and we may even see Unit 13. I hope we get more info on the cosmic horror connection of the mountain itself, and I also hope we get some answers as to how the cult, the mountain, and the thought forms all connect and coexist with each other. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this monster of a video, and if you're even still watching up to this point, I truly appreciate it. If you guys did enjoy, then consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as well as turning on notifications so you don't miss another upload or stream of mine. I've got more theories coming for a series like the Backrooms, Monument Mythos, Vita Carnis, and even some fun ones that I'm cooking up for like Hello Kitty Island Adventure and stuff like that. Also, big announcement, I am in a new analog horror series called Dreamcatcher, and it would mean the world to me if you guys would check it out and subscribe to the channel as well. I'll leave a link to it in the description, and thank you in advance for doing that. Anyway, I hope you guys take care, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!